There is no time limit to this quest, which means that it might take us a long time to reach the Temple of Courage, 13 explained. Also, there's also the threat of the jinns. They just scattered away because of the threat of the Magian King. Now that it's gone, it's safe to say that they may return and block our path. Last but not the least, I believe that there's another Magian King in absolute heaven, so you have to consider that threat as well. When the Wanderers heard that there might be another Magian King, all of their faces turned pale with fright. Facing one was enough for them to feel dismay. Fighting another would make them fall into complete and utter depression. 13 laughed internally. What he said was the truth. There was indeed one more Magian King in the absolute heaven, and that was the demonic salamander. The only saving grace was that this particular Magian King hated conflicts and preferred to sleep near spiritual veins. Although there was a chance that they would encounter it, the possibility was very small. Don't worry, we might not encounter it on our journey at all, so don't look as if the world is about to end, 13 said with a smile. This is the final leg of our mission. After this, all of us will return home. After hearing the word home, the eyes of the Wanderers regained their light as they looked at 13 with determination. The way they looked at the teenage boy had also changed. If before, they looked at him with disdain, doubt, and arrogance, they now looked at him as if he had become a pillar that could support the weight of the world. Let's rest for the night, 13 said. Tomorrow, we meet with Diana and the others and head to the Temple of Courage together. Everyone nodded in agreement and accepted the bedrolls and blanket 13 provided for them. Rocky laid down on the ground, acting as a windbreak to prevent the cold air from affecting the Wanderers, who were in dire need of rest. While their master and the Wanderers slept, 13's monster army stood as night watch, making sure that no monsters would dare to disturb the teenage boy's sleep. 13, who was about to lay down on his own bedroll, suddenly found Erica and Sherry placing their bedrolls right beside him. Since they couldn't sleep inside Rocky's mobile fortress with the Wanderers lest they got suspicious, they decided to just sleep beside 13 for the night. For some reason, Giga and Hercules also lay at the side to sleep, blocking the vision of the other Wanderers and preventing the others from seeing their master's current situation. What are the two of you doing? 13 blinked in confusion because he suddenly found himself being hugged by Erica and Sherry on both sides. Using you as a hug pillow, of course, Erica whispered. This is just common sense, right? That's right, Sherry commented. This is a very normal thing in this situation. 13 blinked once and twice as he remembered the advice of his best friend, Vincent, when it came to women. 13, remember this. When a lady wants to sleep beside you, you're not a man if you say no to them. While contemplating if Vincent's words were true or not, the teenage boy decided that there was no harm in being hugged by the two ladies who were sharing their warmth on this cold night. Soon, he fell asleep under the starry skies, with the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, chuckling from the heavens and giving his very dear friend, 13, a thumbs up. 13 scanned the faces of the members from the Siny faction and the Apostles, all of whom had witnessed his battle with the Magian King. They were all looking back at him with conflicted expressions on their faces, especially Leon, who thought that Zion looked cool during the battle despite his hatred toward the latter. I'm not going to tell you to keep what you saw a secret, but I still think I need to explain what happened, 13 said. As you all know, I have several restrictions on my body, so I'm sure the majority of you are surprised by the fighting prowess I showed earlier. Unfortunately, that power doesn't belong to me. It came from over there. 13 pointed towards the starry skies above his head, making it sound ambiguous. Laplace Demon had told me to clean up the mess I started and gave me the ability to do it. That power you saw wasn't mine. Of course, if you don't believe me, that's fine as well. If you stick with me long enough, you'll get used to seeing these things as well. While 13 was talking, the trolls walked over and handed barbecue skews to the Wanderers, as well as Drazit. The meat was, of course, from the ancient eight-headed serpent, which made the lizard man very happy. For their race, eating such a strong creature was like a badge of honor. Then what about these trolls and the monsters who fought with you? David asked. Are they avatars? No, 13 replied. They are living, breathing monsters. They are not avatars. They are the friends that I met while touring the area of the goblins. I threw them a few pieces of meat, and we hit it off right away. Isn't that right, T1? Right. The troll warlord nodded and even gave the wanderers a thumbs up. Zion is our friend. Very good friend. The troll patted 13's shoulder as if implying that he was telling the truth. Well, then, let's now talk about the gains you got during this battle, 13 stated. All of you managed to get 8 scales in total. The Sini faction has 3, the Apostles have 5. As you may already know, those scales are something that most factions in Pangea would fight for to get. It's quite unfortunate that Laplace Demon took the body of the Magian King after Cranky ate its core. We lost a treasure trove right under our nose. The other wanderers also showed signs of regret, also finding it quite disappointing. Of course, Erica, Sherry, Ratatuska, and Drazit knew very well that the teenage boy was telling a big fat lie. But since they were on the same side, none of them planned on exposing the greatest heist that happened in the absolute heaven. So what now? David asked. We head back to the ruined kingdom of Seneros and wait for the other wanderers to regroup with us, 13 replied. From there, we all travel to our last destination. 13 glanced at his status page to look at the last mission that was on his status page. Trial of Courage, final mission. Located at the northern edge of absolute heaven is the Temple of Courage. The path leading to this place is infested with jinns. Do your best to survive and conquer the Temple of Courage. The final battle awaits at its highest floor. This challenge can be cleared solo or by group. There is no limit to the number of people in the group, but everyone is required to clear this mission using their own power. Only those who are able to pass this trial will be able to complete the mission. Time limit, none. Rewards will be based on your overall contribution to the entire chain quest. A day after 13's battle with the Magian King. How did you clear the mission? That was the first question Diana asked the moment he saw 13 and his group, who had stayed behind to deal with the Magian King. The Magian King was strong, but it took an arrow in the knee. 13 wasn't able to finish what he was going to say next because Diana raised her hand to stop him. Zion, snakes don't have knees, Diana stated. Oh, did I say knee? I meant neck. Zion. Diana couldn't help but facepalm because the teenage boy was clearly messing with her. Okay, I'll tell you the truth, 13 said in a serious tone. I fought a Magian King and beat it to death with a stick. He got us in the first round, but the comeback is real. The young lady pinched the bridge of her nose before shaking her head helplessly. Never mind. It was a mistake asking you. But I'm really telling you the truth, you know. Thinking that 13 was just teasing her, she decided to ask Erica because she believed that one of her close friends wouldn't lie to her. Zion did beat the Magian King with a stick, Erica said. Erica, not you too. Diana sighed. I'm seriously asking you what happened. How did we clear the mission? If you don't believe me, then ask David and the others, Erica replied with a mischievous smile on her face. They will say something similar. Diana thought that her friend was joking, but when she asked the others who had gone to the surface the question she asked her close friend, all of them said the same thing. 13 beat the Magian King with a stick that could increase its size, towering in the heavens. See? Erica patted her friend's shoulder. I told you so. The wanderers were now camped outside the walls of the city of Seneros, which had been destroyed by the Magian King. The survivors had already fled the city, heading to who knows where. Since that was the case, many wanderers tried to scavenge the ruins for anything useful. David and the Sini faction headed straight toward the destroyed castle, hoping to raid its treasury. Unfortunately for them, 13 was 3 steps ahead and ordered Rocky and the members of the parade of 100 demons to storm the city and start a treasure hunt. Rocky immediately went to raid the kingdom's treasure vault and stored everything they looted within his mobile fortress. But he ordered his subordinates to leave some scraps here and there, so the wanderers could still profit from their pillaging. 2 hours later, a meeting was held regarding what they would do for their last mission. As you can see, the last mission is very straightforward, 13 said to the officers, who were assigned to take care of the people assigned to them. We need to travel north to find the Temple of Courage. However, we will definitely encounter djinn-infested lands. The only saving grace is that everyone here is either a rookie or an elite. Our current fighting force is stronger than we had a few days ago, so there's a way to overcome dangerous situations. But the possibility of encountering a monster tied out in the open plains is very high. We'd also have nowhere to run, so if ever, we would have no choice but to fight them. Will your monster friends help? One of the former apostles asked. They will. 13 nodded. But we shouldn't rely on them too much. Think of this as a good opportunity to fight djinns and gain experience. Also, the items you can get from killing them will be very useful in clearing the final mission. They will only help when we're facing an enemy that we alone cannot defeat. Of course, death is a possibility, so everyone must fight to the best of their ability. 13 paused a bit before getting to the heart of the issue. Our food supplies are also almost used up, so I think it will be best if we start our journey tomorrow. Any djinns we find along the way are fair game unless they are too powerful for us to handle. We will be taking routes by the river, so we won't need to worry about water. As long as everyone remains vigilant and able to react to any variables, I believe we will be able to survive the journey without suffering casualties. Since 13 was the current leader of the Wanderers, his words would be carried out without fail. When the meeting ended, the teenage boy glanced at the Wanderers, who wore adamantine-grade armors. They looked like knights of a kingdom out for an expedition. Well, it's more like a crusade than an expedition, 13 thought. Still, with everyone having adamantine-grade weapons and armors, we should be able to handle rank 2 and rank 3 djinns without problems. The scary thing about djinn-infested lands was that each of them was led by a sovereign. But sometimes, the sovereigns weren't the problem. It was their tactic. Djinns like to use swarm tactics, overwhelming their enemies by sheer numbers. 13 didn't plan on letting Rocky and his monster army deal with it. They had over 900 people with them, so they should be able to hold out as long as everyone fought. The elites like Erica and Diana would also be standing at the front lines, making sure that the vanguard would hold. 13 would also be there, commanding everyone, so casualties would be minimized. His plan was to train the Wanderers, similar to how he trained his army in the Rigel continent. Since most Wanderers were first-timers, he planned to employ hit-and-run tactics, allowing the rookies to gain experience and confidence as they journeyed toward the Temple of Courage. The next day, everyone moved in formation, with 13's wagon leading the way. 13's monster army was nowhere to be seen because they had all returned to Rocky's mobile fortress. Although the Wanderers didn't know where the monsters had gone, 13 assured them that they would appear if they needed them. What do you think, Zion? Erica asked as she sat on 13's wagon. Will the last mission be hard? We are traveling in djinn-infested territory, using only a compass to travel north, 13 replied. We neither know how long this journey will be, who we will meet along the way, nor what kind of challenges we will have to face. Since this is the final mission, I doubt that it's going to be easy. I hope that we will not face a Majin King. Girl, don't raise a death flag. While 13 and Erica were doing casual banter, a giant bird soared high in the sky, following the procession of wagons that was headed north. Stella looked at her status page, which told her that this was the last mission that she needed to finish before she could return to Pangea, where she had taken a temporary residence. Even she admitted that the fight against the Majin King was truly dangerous, so she hoped that nothing of the sort would happen again in her third mission. I can't always depend on my parents, Stella muttered. If I don't try to forge my own path, I'm afraid that I will not be able to grow as an individual. Ethan gave a low screech of agreement, assuring her mistress that she was doing the right thing. The beautiful young lady gazed at the wagon at the forefront of the procession with a calm expression on her face. She had to admit that the battle that Zion fought impressed her, making her want to play a more active role in the last mission and face the hurdles that would block her path. Don't get too close to their leader, the sage of the hero party, Joshua, shouted. All of you focus on the small fries. Roland will handle the rest. Screams, roars, and shouts reverberated in the surroundings as the group of wanderers fought against a pack of monsters that had tried to raid their camp in the middle of the night. A shining white banner illuminated the surroundings, allowing the wanderers to keep their calm and see the monsters that had encircled their camp. "Shana, focus on supporting just Roland and Derek," Joshua stated, briefly glancing in the direction where Shana was looking. "That girl can handle things on her own." Shana nodded, but still glanced one last time at the young lady with long blue hair, who seemed to be enjoying her solo battle against the three-eyed wolf, which was a rank 5 sovereign. Is she still human? Shana thought before shifting her gaze at her party members who were fighting another three-eyed wolf of the same rank. Their group of wanderers consisted of 100 people, and most of them were first-time wanderers who hadn't even stepped into the rookie rank. However, there was one teenage girl who was simply an abnormality. Unlike the rest, she was already a rookie, but the strength she showed surpassed what an ordinary rookie could do. Unlike Zion, this girl is more brutal in her way of fighting. The archer of the hero party, Mildred, was helping Derek to protect the first-timers who didn't have a lot of combat experience. Damn! Derek cursed internally as he killed a rank 2 wolf, who had almost sank its jaws on the teenage boy who had come to help protect his comrades as a vanguard. If only Erica or Diana were here, controlling these small fries would be easier. Derek was quite familiar with fighting in the front lines, but his main role was an offensive fighter. But right now, he was also acting as a defender, preventing the lower-rank three-eyed wolves from attacking the helpless wanderers. Of course, there were some wanderers who had been trained as warriors from a young age, helping Derek kill the weaker monsters with everything they had. If not for Shana's support, things would have ended badly for the group of wanderers. The White Banner, Clements, had the ability to help people recover their fatigue and stamina. It also has a healing effect, allowing minor injuries like shallow wounds and bruises to recover over time. Lastly, if Shana channeled her ether on the flag, it could create a barrier, protecting people inside a dome of light. However, Shana couldn't keep the barrier up for a long time, so all combatants were doing their best to finish the battle as fast as they could. Half an hour later, Roland finally killed the rank 5 sovereign that he was fighting. It had been a very difficult battle because his opponent was very agile, and its bodyguards would also join the battle, preventing Roland from gaining the upper hand. Things only settled down when the young lady with blue hair killed her opponent and helped Roland eliminate the alpha monsters that protected their sovereign. "Thank you, Siri," Roland said to the blue-haired girl. "The battle ended faster because of you." "Well, you're not half bad for an initiate," Siri replied as her long blue hair changed color into blonde hair. "But you could have done better." Roland wanted to say that she should be a bit more respectful to those who were older than her, but since he didn't want to make a big deal out of it, he only nodded before going back to their group to see if anyone had suffered serious injuries. After fighting against 13, Roland had been humbled, so although he was upset that Siri was acting very arrogant for her age, he simply thought of her as a female version of Zion. Similar to 13, Siri was also 13 years old. But unlike the rest of the wanderers of the same age, she was already a rookie. Roland and his team met the teenage girl while leading a group of 60 wanderers, who treated him as their leader. He could still remember her first words when he introduced himself to her. "I'm not interested in a hero wannabe. Have you seen Zion Leventis? I want to meet him." At first, they thought that she was just one of the spoiled children who belonged to the 10 prestigious families or the monarch clans. However, when he saw her fighting prowess, he had to admit that she had every reason to be arrogant. Siri was strong, exceptionally so, but unlike 13, her spar with Roland always ended in a draw. The wanderers were very impressed that someone like her had managed to fight against the hero on equal footing, so her prestige among them shot up even more. Still, instead of being happy, Siri looked annoyed that she wasn't able to have the upper hand in fighting against Roland. The reason? It was because out of spite, Derek said that she had no reason to be arrogant because Zion Leventis could beat Roland with one hand tied behind his back. Roland wanted to slap the swordsman silly, but since what he said had really happened, he couldn't refute his words. Before leaving to see his parents after their training ended, he requested a sparring match against 13 to see how much he had improved. 13 agreed on the condition that he would only fight Roland using one hand. But even with that handicap, 13 still won, which made Roland feel that he needed to train more in order to surpass the teenage boy, who was younger than him by a few years. I wonder, how long do we need to travel to reach that temple of courage? Derek said as Shauna healed his injuries. It's been 2 months since we finished our second mission and entered absolute heaven. The farther we go, the stronger the monsters are. Right now, we're only fighting packs of monsters. But if we happen to meet a horde, all of us can only run away if we want to survive. Stop complaining, Shauna replied after she finished healing Derek's injury. If Zion is here, he will probably say something along the lines of, "You're only fighting against small fries, and you're getting injured. Why don't you just bang your head to the wall, you useless piece of *T. Derek shuddered because Shauna had perfectly imitated 13's scolding to a certain extent, making him relieve his past traumas. If Master is here, I will definitely be treated as a slave, Derek stuttered. Please don't raise a death flag, Shauna. The Saintess smiled faintly, having achieved the intended effect that she wanted. Derek only snapped into attention whenever Zion's name was mentioned, as if he was programmed to do it. Siri always mocked Derek and doubted that he was Zion's disciple. The arrogant girl would even say, "Why would Zion Leventis choose to have a stupid disciple like you?" Naturally, Derek didn't let it pass, so he challenged Siri. Unfortunately, he was defeated in less than 5 minutes, making him regret his decision. But Derek was a spiteful person, so he started calling Siri Little Miss Zion. Because 6 out of 10 words that came out from her lips always had Zion in it. The hero party could tell that Siri seemed to treat Zion as her rival. However, all of them were certain that if the two really fought, the one who would win was none other than the teenage boy who had made them go through a hellish training back in his residence, making them stronger than their former selves. And the funny thing was that he only trained them for a short period of time. If 13 had trained them longer, Roland had a feeling that he would be able to defeat Siri easily and no longer have to settle for a draw each time the two of them crossed blades with each other. Another week passed as Roland's group traveled northwest, heading for the Temple of Courage. Unfortunately, they were currently unable to continue pushing forward because they faced an obstacle that was extremely difficult to overcome. A horde of spider-like monsters, numbering in the hundreds, blocked their path to their destination. Even Siri, who was confident in her strength, was not foolish as to bulldoze her way through the horde of monsters. Regardless of how strong she was, she would undoubtedly get overwhelmed by the sheer number of the djinns in front of her. "What now?" Derek asked as he observed the monsters in the distance. "Should we take another path?" Roland didn't reply right away, but his grim expression was enough to tell Derek that they needed to change their course or risk being detected by their enemies. But just as they were about to leave their hiding spot, they noticed a sudden change in the situation. They saw several teenagers rushing at the horde of monsters while riding on their mounts. All of them were wearing black armor, making Roland and Derek wonder if they belonged to a nearby human kingdom. But the one thing that struck their notice was that the mounts of the knights were varied. They rode on wolves, bisons, deers, wild horses, and any other monsters that could run on 4 legs. Because of this diversity, Roland and Derek instinctively knew them for what they were. Wondrous. That was the one word that the two teenage boys thought when they saw the army of knights riding on random monsters. "Fire!" the knight that led the charge ordered, and soon, countless arrows rained down on the spider-like monsters, making them screech in anger. The number of wanderers who had initiated the attack was at least around 300, according to Derek's estimation. Although they were numerous, he doubted that they would be able to deal with the horde of monsters with their numbers. Just as he thought that this was a suicide act, the captain leading the charge shouted another order. "Retreat!" Without even a moment of hesitation, the group of wanderers retreated as if they had done this numerous times already. Roland and Derek didn't hesitate to summon their flying avatars and follow the group, wanting to see where they were headed and what they were planning to do. To their surprise, the group led the monster horde in a valley with a narrow passage. The moment the monster horde entered the valley, they were met with a bombardment of arrows and spells. The most eye-catching of them all were the dozens of fire spears that descended toward the monster horde without any shred of mercy, decimating the lower-ranked monsters and injuring those with higher ranks. Roland's and Derek's eyes widened in shock when they saw the familiar sorceress, who was casting fire spells left and right without pause. "Erica!" Roland shouted as he urged his rank 4 hippogriff to fly in her direction. Don't bother me, Roland, Erica replied as she cast a fireball at the monster army. Can't you see I'm busy? We can talk later. Roland thought that he misheard Erica because the young lady had never talked to him in such a manner in the past. Whenever they were together, she would praise how strong and dependable he was in battle. But the current Erica only gave him a sidelong glance as she continued her magical bombardment without pause. Derek looked at his two friends before scratching his head. Just like Roland, he didn't expect that Erica would address the other party in that manner. So for the time being, he decided to just observe from the side to see what was going on. A few minutes later, Erica stopped her bombardment and glanced at the white smoke rising up from the valley's entrance. Even the archers, who were stationed at the cliffs facing the valley, stopped firing to see the current status of their mission. When the white smoke finally dispersed, the high-ranking monsters could be seen standing up and screeching in anger and pain. At that exact moment, a familiar voice reached everyone's ears. Charge! Another group of wanderers, numbering 300, charged at the entrance of the valley to face the enemies that survived the battle. At the very front was a teenage boy, riding on Black's back and holding a spear in his hand. When he was only dozens of meters away from the rank 6 crimson-eyed spider, he threw his spear without hesitation. The spider raised its front legs to repel the spear, rendering 13's initial strike useless. But he didn't care. The spear throw was merely a distraction for the real attack that was coming next. The enraged rank 6 sovereign charged at 13 in anger, ready to shred him into pieces. But just when the teenage boy was within its strike range, Blackie jumped over the crimson-eyed spider, making it subconsciously raise its body to intercept it. Just as Roland and Derek thought that Nightmare Blackhound would be bitten by the giant spider, Rocky stepped into the air and performed a second jump as if he had stepped on an invisible platform. With its body raised up high, its underside was completely open, allowing the Wanderers to pierce it with their weapons. All of the Wanderers under 13's command had adamantine-grade weapons. This meant that it could pierce the flesh of rank 6 sovereigns unless they were defensive monsters by nature. It just so happened that the crimson-eyed spider wasn't a monster that specialized in defense. Because of this, the weapons of the Wanderers managed to pierce its flesh, catching it by surprise. Like a swarm of ants, the Wanderers swarmed the rank 6 sovereign as if they had lost the sensation of fear in their bodies. Naturally, the rank 6 sovereign tried to fight back, sending the Black Knights flying in its frenzied state. However, since their entire bodies were covered from head to toe with adamantine-grade armor, they didn't suffer any fatal injuries. Sensing that it was impossible to win, the crimson-eyed spider decided to retreat. But how could 13 allow it to do so? A golden flag descended from the sky and blocked the path of the retreating spider, stopping it for a brief moment. A second later, Diana landed on the spider's back and stabbed her sword deep into its flesh. Silvery threads latched on the spider's legs as Sherry, who was riding on top of a blade panther, circled around it, tying it up and preventing it from moving forward. Once the rank 6 sovereign was immobilized, a swarm of wanderers attacked its body without mercy while shouting the chant. Last hit! Last hit! Last hit! Last hit! Last hit! 13 watched the crazed wanderers, who were hoping that they would land the last hit on the monster, giving them the prize of landing the killing blow. Since he wouldn't gain anything from killing the rank 6 sovereign, he simply allowed his subordinates to try their luck. Yes, I killed it. Woo! Leon shouted triumphantly after receiving the reward of killing the rank 6 sovereign. Unlike his previous self, he was now a Zion fanatic, giving the teenage boy his unwavering loyalty. In the 2 months that they had been together, 13 had successfully brainwashed the Wanderers under his command, making them serve him with unwavering loyalty. He was a fair leader, allowing everyone equal chances to gain items from the monsters that they were fighting. The bosses of the monster packs, hordes, and herds were fair game for everyone. While Leon was basking in his glory, Derek landed beside 13 and bowed his head respectfully. Disciple greets master, Derek shouted, as if making sure that everyone heard him. Just like he expected, the Wanderers looked in his direction, curious to see who dared to call their supreme leader his master. Oh, it's you, 13 replied with a faint smile on his face. How have you been, disciple of mine? Seeing that Zion had recognized him in front of everyone, a smug smile appeared on Derek's face as he glanced at the wanderers who were saving under his master. "I'm fine, master." Derek smiled from ear to ear. "What are you doing here? Are you perhaps also headed to the Temple of Courage?" 13 nodded. "That's right." The teenage boy wasn't surprised to see Derek and Roland. His scouts had seen them even before they met the other wanderers. In fact, they had discovered the group led by the hero party and decided to lend them a hand in clearing the monster horde that blocked their path. Since all of them were headed in the same direction, he deemed that it would be best if they helped each other out so that they would be able to clear their mission faster. Lastly, having the complete hero party fight together would increase their strength significantly, which was something that the teenage boy was looking forward to seeing. Suddenly, something landed several meters away from 13, sending dust and ground spreading from every direction. "Zion Leventis, I presume." A young lady with long blue hair and blue eyes looked at the boy with a smile on her beautiful face. She was holding a war axe in her hands, the size of her entire body. "Who's asking?" 13 asked back. "Your worst nightmare." Siri roared as she lunged at 13 with her weapon raised high. She had been waiting for this moment since entering Solterra. Now that her prey was right in front of her, she would no longer hold back and fought the teenage boy using her full strength. Siri found herself staring at the sky above her head. For a brief moment, she was confused as to how she ended up in this position. Half a minute ago, she had charged at Zion Leventis with her war axe raised high to strike. The next second, she was lying face up with her war axe embedded in the ground, several meters away from her. Roland, Derek, Joshua, Mildred, and Shauna looked at this scene in disbelief. All of them had tried to stop Siri when she made her move to attack Zion, but before they could act, the battle was already over. After realizing what just happened, Siri immediately propped herself from the ground and summoned a spear, not even caring about the war axe she had dropped earlier. Her gaze locked in on the teenage boy, who had already distanced himself from the other wanderers. "Who are you, and why are you attacking me?" 13 asked. However, instead of answering, Siri charged once more and unleashed a flurry of spear thrusts with the intention to kill. 13, however, dodged and deflected her attacks with ease, making Siri feel irritated. Perhaps out of anger, she threw her spear, which 13 once again dodged with ease. A second later, Siri slashed down with a sword in hand, but 13 had already summoned his short sword and parried it. Sparks flew as the two weapons clashed, making the wanderers look in awe at the prowess of the teenage girl, who was trying to hack their supreme leader to death. Roland, Derek, and Diana, who also wielded the sword, watched this battle with great concentration. They were studying Zion's movements as he systematically dodged and parried Siri's attacks, making them learn a lot from this exchange. "You know, I'm a very busy person," 13 said as he used the pommel of his short sword to hit Siri's hand, making her drop the sword in her hand. "This is your last warning. If you attack me again, I will no longer hold back just because you're a girl." "You're not a rookie," Siri said as she summoned a pair of short swords in each hand. "No rookie can possibly survive my attacks unscathed." "You're right. I'm not a rookie," 13 replied as he summoned another short sword. "I'm a super rookie." Siri stated. "Remember the name of the person who will defeat you." The two teenagers stared at each other, both holding a short sword in each hand. The hero party had seen the young man fight during their sparring matches and simulation battles in Gandam. But for some reason, Roland and the others believed that 13 was still not using the full extent of his abilities. Shanu, Roland, Derek, Joshua, and Mildred knew that Siri was strong. She had often sparred with Roland, and the battle always ended in a draw. However, Zion had thwarted her twice, and he made it look so easy, which made Roland and Derek feel bitter in their hearts. "This is your last warning," 13 said. "I don't take it lightly when people attack me with killing intent. Die." Siri ignored 13's warning and stomped her right foot forward, lunging at her opponent like an arrow in flight. 13 narrowed his eyes as he, too, charged forward, clashing with the blue-haired girl who seemed to be hell-bent on fighting him. The wanderers, who had followed Zion through their journey, was surprised because they hadn't seen Zion Leventis fight seriously. Of course, those who were present during 13's battle with the Magian King looked at Siri as if she was some kind of rabid puppy who had no idea whom she was trying to bite. A minute later, a cry of pain reached their ears as 13 used an elbow strike to hit the side of Siri's face, targeting her jaw, making the teenage girl stagger. But it didn't end there. 13 followed up with a punch, breaking Siri's nose. Just as everyone thought that the battle had ended, 13 followed up with a back kick that sent the teenage girl flying. The men couldn't help but look at Zion in horror, seeing how he didn't hold back even though he was fighting a girl. What they didn't know was that Zion was a system, and he didn't care about the gender of those who were trying to kill him. Several of his hosts had died because they were backstabbed by their lovers. After witnessing such betrayal more than just once, twice, and thrice, 13 couldn't care less about the information of those whom he was fighting, including whether they were men or women. If they want to kill him, they should be prepared to be killed by him as well. But he didn't kill Siri. He just made sure to teach her a lesson so that she wouldn't dare to face him again. 13 glanced at the fallen girl on the ground before turning around to order his people to start dismantling the spiders to get their cores and see if any of their body parts would be useful. However, he only managed to walk a few steps before he felt some movement behind him. Siri had already propped herself up from the ground and wiped the blood that was flowing down from her nose. The injury she received was healing at a fast pace, making 13 frown. "You still want to fight?" 13 asked as he cracked his knuckles and walked towards Siri, who was glaring in his direction. "Why you? How can you hit a lady's face without holding back?" Siri asked in anger. "Are you out of your mind? What if you disfigure me?" "I see. So you choose death," 13 replied. "I can help with that." Suddenly, Siri's body trembled as 13 released a killing intent that made her knees turn into jelly. What? Siri, who lost the strength of her legs, found herself sitting on the ground, her body trembling non-stop. The killing intent that Zion had released was only directed at her, making her feel on an instinctual level that if she messed with the person in front of her, she was really going to die. 13 had accompanied his hosts to countless battlefields. After everything he had been through and the unfairness that his hosts had been subjected to, 13's killing intent gradually built up and became something that not just anyone could face head-on. That killing intent had first flared up when Cranky had died, allowing him to wield Ruiyi Jingu Bang and harness its might to pummel the Magian King to oblivion. Siri, who had never been exposed to such powerful killing intent, couldn't help but look at the teenage boy in fear. For a brief moment, Siri saw a scene where Zion Leventis stood on a mountain of corpses, looking down on her with those green glowing eyes that didn't seem to belong to a human being. Perhaps, reaching her limit, her eyes rolled out of her socket before collapsing unconscious on the ground. After seeing that the stubborn girl had finally fainted, 13 closed his eyes to disperse his killing intent. Only when he was certain that he had properly reined in on his emotions did he open them again. "Diana, order everyone to start gathering cores," 13 ordered as he rubbed his face with his hands. "We will be staying in this valley today. Then we'll continue our journey tomorrow." Diana nodded and started to give out orders. She was the second in command of their battalion, so everyone heeded her orders without fail. Shano, on the other hand, went to check on Siri's condition and started to use her healing magic on her. 13 gave the unconscious girl one last glance before motioning for Derek to come closer to him. "Who is this rabbit girl?" 13 asked. "Why did she attack me?" "She's Siri, and well, she seems to treat you as some kind of rival," Derek replied. "She always says that when the two of you meet, she will show everyone that she's better than you. She also says that what you can do, she can do better," Roland commented. But it seems that it was all just bravado. Roland eyed the teenage boy, whom he also considered his rival. Originally, he thought that he could now defeat Zion if the two of them sparred with each other. But after watching his fight with Siri, Roland realized that he was still not Zion's match. He no longer looked at the teenage boy as a rookie. Just like what Siri had said, it was impossible for a rookie to possess such strength. Still, there was no doubt that 13's current rank, at least on paper, was a rookie, making Roland frown. A super rookie. Roland thought. But just as he was thinking along those lines, he remembered a story that was told to him by the field commander of the central government. According to him, there were 3 types of wanderers: the normal wanderer, the pathfinder, and last, but not the least, the legendary beyonder, an existence that surpassed all wanderers. Can it be? Roland mused as he looked at 13's back, who was walking towards Sherry and Erica. Although he hadn't seen a beyonder, nor did he know what they were like, he believed that if they really existed, only the teenage boy, whom he begrudgingly recognized as someone more capable than him, could be one of those legendary beyonders who would lead all of them to a brighter future. A few hours later, bonfires illuminated the surroundings as everyone happily ate the barbecued meat from the spiders that they had killed earlier. Jinns liked to eat wanderers, but it was also the same for them. The god of wanderers had granted his subjects the ability to consume the flesh of jinns regardless of what type of monster they were. With the exception of the jinns who were truly venomous or had poison coating their bodies, the wanderers could eat them without problems. While everyone was having a good time, 13 sat between Sherry and Erica, eating the barbecued spider leg that they prepared for him. Shanu, who was seated across 13, glanced at Sherry and Erica before shaking her head helplessly. The 2 of them had been infected by the Zion virus, Shana thought. I better use purification magic on them later. Sherry and Erica, who had no idea what the saintess was talking about, took turns feeding the teenage boy, which made Derek look at him with awe and admiration. He knew that Erica liked Roland, so he thought that she was only acting close to Zion because she was treating him like a little brother. As for Sherry, both of them were of the same age, and it wasn't unheard of for wanderers who shared life-and-death battles together to get close to each other. Half an hour later, 13, who had finished eating, asked Roland how they arrived in absolute heaven. According to the hero recognized by the central government, they entered absolute heaven from the plains of Rashek. The funny thing was that, when Roland appeared in Solterra, he was together with the sage of their party, Joshua. A month later, they met Shauna, Derek, and Mildred, who were leading a group of wanderers who were doing their missions. When Roland finished his story, it was 13's turn to share his own. The teenage boy told everyone how he met Erica and stopped the war between the Ratkins and the Lizardmen. Diana then continued to tell the second part of the story where they traveled to the kingdom of Seneros. Since the Crusader led the wanderers to retreat underground, Erica decided to tell them about their exciting battle against a Magian king. Derek, who was listening intently to Erica's story, dropped the barbecued spider leg he was holding due to shock. Hey, you're not exaggerating, right? Derek asked. You like to exaggerate things, you know? HMPH. This why you're still single, Erica scoffed. Derek scratched his head with a face filled with injustice. What does me being single have to do with you exaggerating things? Sherry couldn't help but chuckle because she found this banter between the members of the hero party quite amusing. Just like most wanderers in Pangea, he looked up to them because they represented the heroes of the young generation. After interacting with Erica, Sherry realized that although the sorceress could be arrogant at times, she was a very caring person. Lastly, now that she met the members of the hero party, she deemed that all of them were good people. Still, is it true that you really defeated a Magian king? Shanu asked. 13 nodded. I got help from Laplace Demon. I didn't win with my own strength. Phew. Roland, Derek, Joshua, and Mildred all patted their chests in relief because the news of Zion killing a Magian king was simply too far-fetched for them to comprehend. The teenage boy had already done many legendary feats. If the news of him beating a Magian king was to spread in Pangea, the delicate balance of power that was being maintained by the different factions might start to shift and cause consequences that even the Leventis family might not be able to bear. 13 knew this as well, so he made sure to mention that he got external help. This was the only explanation he could think of to make those who were in a position of power not think that he could single-handedly defeat a Magian king, whom even the monarchs wouldn't dare to fight. The sound of fighting reverberated in the Shurinks as 13's knights, whom he monarched the Knights of the Apocalypse, killed the monsters that blocked their path. Since all of them were wearing the same black, adamantine-grade armor, they truly looked like knights that came from an established kingdom. Strange, Roland said. How come the Vanguard doesn't kill the monsters they face? They simply cripple them before moving to the next target. I thought that I'm the only one who noticed it, but it seems that you are thinking the same thing, Joshua commented. The knights on the 4th row also ignored the monsters on the G, allowing the ones from the 5th team to land the killing blow. Derek rubbed his chin. I've never said this tactic before. They had just ranked up to rank 3 monsters, Siri scoffed. There's no point killing such small fries. You're wrong about that, Shauna stated. Zion doesn't do things without a reason, and the way I see it, it seems that they have established some rules on who will deal the killing blow. The Saints of the Hero Party watched as Third's army annihilated hundreds of rank up to rank 3 wild dogs, which were led by a rank 4 alpha monster. I think I get it. Mildred, who has the best eyesight among them, decided to share her theory. They are farming items, but since the monsters are low-ranked, they give priority to certain individuals, specifically the ones on the back rows. Bingo! You got it, Mildred. Erica, who landed beside the archer, said with a smile. Third has developed a system where all wanderers can gain items during this expedition. The same can be said for cores. Those who didn't get items or cores get priority and are moved to the back lines. Once they get their items, they will go to the front and act as vanguards, allowing others to get their turn. The Wanderers, who were part of Roland's group, couldn't help but look at this item farming strategy with VY. They realized that everyone under Zion's team possessed adamantine grade equipped. All of them felt jealous. After all, the adamantine grade was just a rank below the mythical grade. Simply put, the rookies under Third's command already have D-game equipped, which they could use throughout their career as Wanderers. I wish I had BST to the place where Sir Zion was. I appeared here in Solterra. Me too. Why can't I be as lucky as them? Several Wanderers weren't able to stop voicing out their regrets. If they had joined Third's group sooner, wouldn't they also get the same equipment that they had? The funny thing was that the majority of the Wanderers under 13's command hadn't been trained to fight. They were simply carried by the teenage boy, who was currently watching all of this while riding on top of the rank 6 sovereign, Nightmare Blackhound. The imposing creature looked so cool that even Derek was tempted to have one. When asked how he managed to tame such a monster, 13 said that he just threw some meat at the Nightmare Blackhound, and they became instant friends. Derek could tell that his master was just spouting bullshit tea. If he were to do the same, and throw monster meat at a rank 6 sovereign, there was a 99.9% chance that he would become its next meal. Did all of you succeed in getting an item? Kyle Walker, who was the 6th squad captain under 13's battalion, asked. Yes, Captain. Good. Kyle nodded. In the next raid, it's our turn to be the vanguard. I want you to list to the commander's order without fail. Understood? Yes, sir. Okay, you know what to do, Kyle said as he gazed at the monster corpses that littered the battlefield. Get the cores and drain the monster's blood. Yes, sir. After giving his orders, he joined his subordinates in collecting the monster cores, which he would deliver to their commander, Zion Leventis. Their supreme leader was responsible for allocating these cores to the Wanderers, allowing everyone to get their share of the spoils of battle. Kyle, the son of a carpenter, didn't expect that his life would have a dramatic turn during his first wandering. To be perfectly honest, he was merely one of the many Wanderers under 13's command, lucky enough to survive simply because fate put them in the super rookie's way. His hands, who had learned the craft of carpentry from his father, had helped in the creation of the wood wagons that everyone had been using in their journey. Seeing his expertise, 13 had assigned him as the leader of the production team, responsible for creating arrow shafts and repairing wagons, as well as building any item that 13 deemed would be useful in their expedition. Since he was one of the core members of 13's temporary battalion, he was given the rank of squad captain, allowing him to be recognized due to his contributions. He and his family lived in the Sinai continent, which was about to face a Jinn invasion. Because of this, he was doing his best to learn on how to fight under 13's command, so that when it was the time to defend their homeland, he would be there, fighting alongside them. While everyone was busy doing their roles, those who still haven't received any cores during their expedition formed 4 lines in front of 13. Erica, Sherry, and 2 more squad captains were distributing cores for these wanderers, allowing them to absorb them without problems. As for the core of the alpha monsters and sovereigns, 13 had made an ingenious system for its distribution. It was by throwing dices. For example, the first squad would be the one to get the core of alpha monsters and above. Each member would toss 3 dices, and the one who gets the highest number would get its core. The next alpha or sovereign core would then be given to the second squad, and all of them would repeat the same process. This was to allow everyone to fairly distribute the rewards, giving each of them a chance. Those who managed to win these alpha and sovereign cores then would not be allowed to join the next of dice throwing, giving the rest a chance to get them as well. While everyone was busy handling the aftermath of the battle, Roland approached 13 and asked him what they were going to do next. In a bit, we will head northeast and fight another horde of djinns, 13 replied. Isn't the temple said to be in the northwest? Roland frowned. Yes, but there's no rush, 13 answered. No rush. Shouldn't reaching the temple be our priority? Is it? The teenage boy looked at the hero with a smile. Are you sure going to the temple should be our priority? 13 asked. Isn't that common sense? Roland asked back. 13 shook his head. List, Roland. I already st a scout to look for the location of the Temple of Courage. While that scout is looking for the place where we need to be, we should focus on gaining combat experience. Combat experience. Roland frowned. Why? He couldn't understand why they needed to gain combat experience when they were already capable of fighting against low-ranking monster hordes. Roland was right in thinking this way because he was strong. He was now capable of fighting toe-to-toe with a rank 5 sovereign, which could have potentially wiped their hero party if not for the fact that 13 had given them a hellish training. Not everyone is as strong as you, Roland, 13 said. In a few years, the Sini continent will be invaded by djinns. They will come in hordes, and those who have never experienced facing such numbers would often get paralyzed with fear or die meaningless death because they have no idea on how to deal with such an overwhelming number of monsters. The central government and its armies can fend them off using modern weapons forged from monster parts. But the moment those monsters reach the front lines, everyone will have no choice but to fight at close quarters. Right now, I'm training them how to deal with such threats. The territory of absolute heaven is the perfect training G for djinn invasions. It will be a waste if we don't use this opportunity to train and farm items for the future. 13 then glanced at the rookies, who were happily collecting cores from the monsters that they had slain. Under his teachings, even those without prior training were now able to hold their G against rank and rank monsters. They may only be rookies right now, but in the future, they may become excellent wanderers who will play a role in the bigger picture, 13 said with confidence. Since we can't always be on the same missions, I intend to groom them to the best of my ability. That way, they will have a higher chance to survive their second wandering. 13 sighed as he looked at the sky, knowing that the God of Wanderers was paying attention to his conversation with Roland. Not all who wander are lost, 13 said. Every wanderer counts. The seeds that we plant today will become the trees that will cover the entire forest, allowing others to take shelter under their wing. 13 reached out to bump his fist on Roland's chest before staring at the hero with a steady gaze. You're still a small tree right now, 13 stated, and you need more battle experience to grow. Aren't you ashamed? I'm just a rookie, but even with your current strength, you won't be able to beat me. You're not a rookie, remember. Roland rolled his eyes. You said it yourself. You are a super rookie. That's right. And you defeated a Magian king. Not by my own power. Get your facts straight. A sigh escaped 13's lips because his ultimate trump card to beat the crap out of his father could no longer be used. But he didn't regret using it. He was now engaged to the present. As he was told, only by existing in the present will he have a choice to see tomorrow's sunrise. Roland looked at the teenage boy and felt as if he wasn't looking at a person younger than him. He already felt this when he interacted with him the first time. Zion Leventis was a mysterious individual. There is no rookie like him in the world. Several restrictions were placed in his body as if the gods were jealous of his growth potential. But even with those restrictions, he had accomplished many amazing feats, and his wrecked battle against a Magian king would be added to his legendary achievements. Roland, who was hailed as the hero of the central government and treated as a prodigy, paled in comparison to 13's achievements. The only advantage he had over the boy was that he was more good-looking than Zion. Of course, he didn't dare say this out loud because he didn't want to hurt the younger boy's feelings. But even if he did, 13 would just look at him weirdly because for the system of cannon fodders, this had never been an issue. So what if Roland was more good-looking than him? Did he care? No. 13 only had two goals in life: to screw the system god T times over and beat fate in her own B*TCHY game. Before the Sini invasion began, 13 planned to increase his current strength a step further. Although he was a rookie, his true strength was that of the master rank. His preparations to strengthen his body were well underway, since he found another loophole in order to increase his strength, which Laplace Demon reluctantly agreed to. He believed that he would possess the strength of a grandmaster or champion before the Sini invasion begins. The rank ban only allowed him to go to the next rank to become a rookie. This was true regardless of what laws of power were used in the world he was in. But there is just one little, tiny loophole that 13 could use to boost his strength. Since he could level up from level 0 to level 1, this meant that he could use other forms of ranking systems. In the world of Solterra and Pangea, he had already reached the limit. But what if he used the ranks of a cultivation system? Right now, his current cultivation rank was 0. Since the first step into the path of cultivation was the chi refining stage, 13 could practice cultivation to double his current strength. This was a loophole that Laplace Demon and the One had begrudgingly accepted. From the very start, 13 wasn't worried about his limitation. Even if he could only reach level, he would just have to become level in all kinds of rankings. First level Chi refining stage. Rank Martial Realm. Rank Spiritual Magic. First Circle Magician. Level Druid. Level Sorcerer. Level Barbarian. So on, and so forth. If this was a D&D game, 13 would be multiclassing and unlock dozens of prestige classes. By stacking all of those ranking systems, 13 would gain a power that would make Laplace Demon and the One understand why the system god had placed such extreme restrictions on 13's body. If left unchecked, it was highly possible that the weakest wanderer would become a demigod and break the balance of the entire world. This was also the reason why Laplace Demon and the One had decided to make some concessions and reached a compromise with 13. The only thing they had agreed on was that 13 could only increase his cultivation rank to the chi refining stage, doubling his current strength. The teenage boy agreed with this restriction, for at the moment, that was all that he needed. He just needed a stronger body, enough to handle his Soul Keeper armor, which had the ability to evolve. 13 then glanced behind him to look at Siri, whose hair had changed into a blonde color, glaring in his direction. Roland and the other wanderers didn't know who or what she really was, but 13 knew her true colors. The young lady, who was of the same age as him and treated him as a rival, was not human. But, since Siri hadn't hurt any wanderers and even helped them survive during their first and second missions, he decided to turn a blind eye for the time being. This way, he would be able to watch over her and understand why she had managed to lower her rank to that of a rookie despite having the strength of an apostle. 3 months had passed since Roland's team integrated with 13's battalion. There could only be one leader, so the hero party decided to merge with 13's army, forming a united front. In the past 3 months, they traveled to the location of the Temple of Courage, often making detours whenever 13 scouts found hordes of jinns, whom they attacked without fail. The teenage boy didn't care even when the leaders of these jinn hordes were rank 6 up to rank 7 sovereigns. His monster army would always deal with the high-ranking monsters, leaving the annihilation of the small fries to the wanderers. Due to the accumulated combat experiences, even the shyest members in 13's battalion had now become a seasoned fighter. With Rocky, Giga, Blackie, Hercules, the ogres, trolls, and the hero party acting as the vanguard, they didn't suffer any casualties in battle. Siri had challenged 13 many times, each battle leading to her defeat. Sometimes, she didn't even bother to challenge him and just simply launched sneak attacks. Due to this, Shana gave the battle junkie girl a warning that she would no longer heal her injuries if she attacked Zion out of the blue. The only saving grace was that Siri never attacked 13 whenever they were dealing with a monster army. If she really went ahead and did that, 13 would no longer show any mercy and cripple her for insubordination. Unlike Shaneo and the others, who still treated Siri as a human, 13 saw her for what she truly was. Of course, he didn't tell anyone that Siri wasn't human because he still had his reservations. He simply decided to ignore her for the time being and focus on the things that he needed to do. One day, the teenage boy woke up inside his wagon band, saw two ugly birds sitting on his chest, looking at his face with dumb look on their faces. Erica and Sherry were still asleep beside him, their arms wrapped around his body. Because of this, he wasn't able to move right away, so he simply stared at the two birds who were also staring back at him. 13 blinked once then twice, as he observed the two hand-sized Pokopokos, who were looking down at him in disdain. "Hey, are you stupid?" the first Pokopoko asked. "We hate stupid people," the second Pokopoko declared. Instead of answering their question, 13 propped himself up to a sitting position, making the two small Pokopokos fly toward the other side of the wagon. "What are you two dumb birds looking at?" 13 asked. "This dumb human is calling us dumb," the first Pokopoko scoffed. "This junior is courting death," the second Pokopoko sneered. Erica and Sherry, who were woken up by the commotion, glanced at 13, who was talking to the two Pokopokos, each the size of the teenage boy's hand. "Zion, do you know these birds?" Erica asked as she propped herself up, making the corner of a nightgown slip from her shoulder. "Maybe," 13 replied as he casually reached out to fix Erica's nightgown, unfazed by what he saw, before shifting his attention back to the two dumb-looking birds who reminded him of his two loyal companions. "Didn't your parents tell you that you shouldn't talk to humans?" 13 asked. "They did," the first Pokopoko nodded. "Then why?" 13 inquired. "Because we are given permission, doofus," the second Pokopoko stated. Sherry covered her lips and giggled because this was the first time that someone dared to call Zion doofus. "I like these two birds," Erica said with a smile. Although they looked ugly, the way they talked to Zion made them look cute in her eyes. "Shut up, you ugly *tch, the first Pokopoko sneered. "You old hag," the second Pokopoko sneered. "Do you think anyone is interested even if you show off your saggy breasts?" The smile on Erica's face instantly disappeared after the two young Pokopokos ridiculed her. "Zion, I made a decision," Erica said as she raised a finger to summon a small fireball. "We're having fried chicken for breakfast." "Ah, Moda," the first Pokopoko shouted before flying away in a hurry. "Damn saggy *tch, the second Pokopoko cursed angrily before flying away. Once the two troublemakers disappeared, peace returned inside the wagon. Erica then raised her hands to do a light stretch, making her chest stand out. Sherry looked at the older girl's chest before shifting her gaze to her own. "You're still young," 13 said before lightly patting Sherry's head. "There's still time." 13 too did some light stretches before parting the animal skin to take a peek outside of the wagon. The sky was lightening up, which meant that the sun would be rising soon. After seeing the two Pokopokos, 13 had a feeling that they didn't come to him without a purpose. "I'll go outside for a bit, so the two of you can change clothes," 13 said before leaving the wagon. Erica was wearing a black one-piece nightgown, while Sherry was wearing pajamas. The pajamas were provided to Zion, while Erica had a set of nightgowns in her storage ring. Of course, she wouldn't dare to wear something like this in front of others. The only reason she wore it was due to the fact that 13 seemed completely unaffected by her beauty, even when she was wearing something a bit revealing. At first, she did it to get a reaction from the teenage boy, but seeing that he didn't even blush at her appearance, Erica felt that her femininity had taken a hit. Since then, whenever they slept together, she would wear nightgowns, finding them more comfortable to sleep in. The only sad part was that even if she wore the very sexy ones, 13 remained unmoved. In the end, Erica thought that maybe 13's was already used to being around beautiful girls since all the girls in his family were beautiful. His mother, Alessia, was a truly beautiful woman, and her daughters inherited her beauty. Shasha, who was one of the most popular wanderers of her generation, had many suitors. Erica believed that once Remy started a journey in Solterra, she, too, would become the center of attention because just like Shasha, her good looks would definitely stand out. As 13 walked along the camp, the early risers greeted him with a smile. Once he arrived at a good location, he summoned Blackie, and the two of them ran away from the camp until they found a suitable place for a meeting. Just like he expected, he sensed the presence of 4 creatures descending from the sky. 2 adult Pokopokos and 2 young ones landed on a boulder beside 13. The teenager boy smiled and reached out to pat the 2 adult Pokopokos' head. "It has been a while, Visago and Poka," 13 said. "What took you so long, Zion?" Visago asked. "You've been away for years. I thought you're not going to return," Poka commented. "The spirits of the wind, who is always traveling the world, haven't seen you." "Well, many things happened," 13 replied. "But I'm glad you found me." 13 then shifted his attention to the 2 smaller Pokopokos, who looked surprised that their parents were allowing a human to pet their heads. "Are these your kids?" 13 asked with a smile. "It seems that the 2 of you have been busy since I was away." Visago and Poka glanced at each other before nodding their heads. "Yes, we decided to have a family," Visago replied. "What are their names?" 13 inquired. "Their names are hard to speak in human language," Poka answered. "So why don't you give them a nickname, just like the names you've given us?" "Are you sure?" 13 smiled, while rubbing his chin. "Give me a good name, human," the first Pokopoko said. "That's right. I want a good name," the second Pokopoko demanded. 13 pondered for a bit before pointing his finger at the first Pokopoko, who seemed to always be the one to initiate the conversation. "Your name will be Pika," 13 said. "And yours will be Pyko." "Pika. Pyko." The 2 little Pokopokos tilted their heads to the side before nodding their heads at the same time. "I am Pika." "I am Pyko." Visago and Poka were happy that the human boy, whom they had served once as their master, had bestowed their children their nicknames. Words had power, and the Pokopokos use this power in their everyday lives. They may possess many names in their lifetimes, but they would only allow people whom they truly trust to bestow names upon them. "Well then, Visago and Poka," 13 said with a smile. "Are you interested in going off into another adventure?" "We wouldn't have traveled far to find you if we didn't want to travel together," Visago replied. "Isn't that right, darling?" "Yes, husband," Poka replied. "Take good care of us and the kids, Zion. I look forward to having another adventure with you." The teenage boy smirked before shifting his attention to the 2 troublemakers, whom he believed would make this journey more interesting due to their peculiar personalities. With Visago and Poka helping scout from the sky, their journey toward the Temple of Courage went smoother. The 2 Pokopokos had already found the location of the temple, and after relaying the information they've seen along the way, the teenage boy couldn't help but fall into deep thought. It seems that the kingdom of Seneros isn't the only place with survivors, 13 thought. But unlike those half-bloods, the people living in the city around the temple are all absolutes. Absolutes were considered as superhumans. Although they weren't as strong as Supum Asteriscan, who was born from the planet Kaipati Asteriscan, they were still as strong as Captain Murica, who was stronger than ordinary humans. Of course, Wanderers were also considered as superhuman since they, too, had gained powers that made them superhuman. Even so, when matched with the same rank, absolutes would always be more powerful than Wanderers. "I hope they are not hostile," 13 thought as their forces traveled to their destination. "With our current speed, we will reach the location of the temple within 5 days. We will probably meet the hunting parties of the locals very soon." According to Visago, the city where the temple was located was under the protection of a white dome of light. They didn't know if this dome prevented monsters from entering the city. However, Visago and Poka were able to pass through it without any problems. "Maybe it only works against djinns," 13 mused before shaking his head. "It's still too early to make assumptions. I'll find out when we get there." The only concern he had at the moment was whether the absolutes would act hostile against them. The Pokopokos also reported that there were at least around 3,000 to 4,000 absolutes living inside the city, seemingly protected by the white dome of light. Why can't things be easy? 13 sighed as he sat on the coachman's seat of his wagon, guiding the rank 2 bisons to the shortest route to their destination. Suddenly, a shadow covered 13 from above, prompting him to raise his head to investigate. Sitting on the roof of his wagon was the bowed man, Zed, who had helped him fight against the Magian King in exchange for his freedom. "Why are you here?" 13 asked. "I thought you had already left." "I did leave," Zed replied. "But after traveling for a few days, I realized that I have no place to go." "Well, I offered to return you to the Rigel continent, but you refused," 13 commented. Zed frowned because he no longer had any intention in returning to the Rigel continent. "I don't like being shackled," Zed stated. "If I return, nothing will change. I will still have to serve the master once he crosses over to Pangea." "Right." 13 nodded. "Your master is a peak Magian prince." Since he had become closer to the 3 Earth Dragons, 13 managed to get some answers from them about their master. According to his estimate, the Magian prince would be able to cross over to Pangea after 5 to 8 years. But 13 was confident that he would have the forces to defeat Zed's and the Earth Dragon's master when that time came. Unless their master succeeds in stepping into the ranks of a Magian king, 13 believed that he would be able to find a way to deal with him. "So, what are you planning?" 13 inquired. "Want to tag along with us for a while?" Zed didn't answer and just stayed in the distance as if pondering about the meaning of life. Seeing that Zed no longer wanted to talk, 13 no longer tried to pry any answers from him. However, Zed's presence alarmed the Wanderers because they could feel the aura emanating from his body. If not for the fact that Erica had repeatedly told them that the bowed man wasn't hostile, they might have already scattered like wild ducks after hearing a gunshot. The members of the Sini faction and David's team were already acquainted with Zed. They had seen him fight alongside 13 and his monster army, so at the very least, although they felt a little anxious, they weren't as terrified as the other Wanderers, who were seeing the Birdman for the first time. Of course, there were others who recognized him like Shana, who was there when 13 threw something at Zed, making him disappear without a trace. When the Saintess asked 13 why Zed was traveling with them, the teenage boy only said that he and the Birdman had an agreement. As to what that agreement was, the teenage boy refused to say because it was highly confidential. 3 days later, 13 scouts reported that the Absolutes had already detected the Wanderers' presence and were also monitoring them. The Wanderers, who were assigned to scout, were cautioned to not approach the Absolutes because they might think of it as a provocation. A day later, a group of Absolutes, numbering a little over 100, blocked the path they were taking. All of them were fully armed, and although they weren't releasing killing intent or any form of hostility, 13 knew that they shouldn't give them a reason to attack them. Since his wagon was at the very front of their formation, he signaled for everyone to stop. "Erica, call Roland and your other team members," 13 ordered. Bring Sean and David as well." Erica nodded and went to look for her teammates. A few minutes later, 13 and his entourage walked toward the Absolutes without holding any weapons in their hands. Including Zion, there were only 10 people representing their side, which was his attempt to make it seem that they wished no conflict between them and the Absolutes. "I am the leader of the Wanderers, Zion Leventis," 13 declared when his group stopped several meters away from the Absolutes. "Who is your leader? Are you really the leader of your group?" The Absolutes made way and allowed an old man to have a dialogue with the teenage boy, who claimed to be the leader of the humans who had entered their domain. "I am," 13 replied. "Who am I speaking to?" "You may call me Ares," Ares answered. "I'm the first guardian of the sanctuary. Tell me, how did you manage to cross the boundary of the wall of the Absolute?" 13 didn't answer right away because he was carefully observing the old man's body language. While he didn't feel any hostility coming from him, he could distinctly feel that just like him, Ares was also observing his body language. "The wall broke apart, allowing us to cross over to this side of absolute heaven," 13 stated. "I knew it." Ares narrowed his eyes. "All of you came from the other side of the wall. How did the wall break apart? It should have been strong enough to hold for at least another millennia." "The king of the kingdom of Senero summoned a monster that broke the wall by itself," 13 explained. "It's a Magian king, the ancient eight-headed serpent that goes by the name Orokai. After hearing 13's answer, the warriors behind Ares became agitated. If what the teenage boy was saying was the truth, then their sanctuary might be in danger of getting attacked by the Magian King. But unlike his subordinates, Ares remained calm, and his gaze never left 13's face. Based on the route you are taking, you will soon be arriving at our sanctuary, Ares said. What is your goal? The Temple of Courage, 13 answered without hesitation. The faces of the warriors hardened after hearing 13's reply. It seems that they were more concerned that a group of teenagers are headed to their sanctuary in search of the Temple of Courage than the Magian King, who could potentially wipe them out if left unchecked, 13 mused. The teenage boy purposely hid the fact that the Magian King's threat had already been dealt with. Since he didn't know how the Absolutes would react to their mission of going to the Temple of Courage, he decided to frame a situation where their attention to the Absolutes would be diverted to a threat that could wipe their existence from the face of absolute heaven. Since you've traveled from afar, you are welcome to enter our sanctuary, Ares said after a few minutes have passed. Just make sure that you don't break our rules so that we can avoid conflict with each other. Thank you in advance for your hospitality, Lord Ares, 13 said in a respectful tone. The old man simply nodded before giving a signal to his men to return to their city. We will wait for you at the entrance of the sanctuary, Ares stated. After saying his parting words, the old man suddenly started to run, making Erica's mouth hang open. Ares looked like a very frail old man, so she didn't expect that he could run so fast, as if his backside was on fire. The other warriors, who blocked their path, followed behind Ares, leaving 13 and his entourage behind. I guess they are not hostile, Erica asked after nearly a minute of silence. Don't let your guard down, 13 cautioned. Tell everyone to be prepared for anything once we enter their sanctuary. They might not be as friendly as they appear to be on the surface. Everyone nodded in understanding before returning to their wagons. Tiona, send your clone to infiltrate their city, 13 said softly. Tiona nodded in understanding and summoned her clone. Soon, the black snake burrowed underground before heading toward the sanctuary, where the Absolutes were waiting for their arrival. Shana, can I ask you a question? What is it, Erica? I'm just wondering, why are you casting purification magic on me and Siri every day? Is there something wrong with us? There are many viruses in Solterra, and I'm just making sure that you and Siri won't be affected by them. I see. Ever since the merger began, Shana would look for Erica and Siri whenever they weren't busy and cast a purification spell on them once a day. The sorceress had no idea why the saintess was doing this only to her and Zion's right-hand woman. Erica had asked Diana and Mildred if Shana was also using purification magic on them, but the two girls only shook their heads and said no. After that, she went to look for Roland, Derek, and Joshua and asked them if Shana did the same to them, but their answer was also no. This made the sorceress wonder if Shana was just playing a prank on them or not. But since there was no harm in being purified, she just let it be. The purification magic not only helped remove diseases, but it also purified the body in a literal sense. It was like taking a bath without actually touching water, leaving their bodies clean. Since Erica liked to be clean, she just went along with Shana's whims. In the end, she wasn't losing anything in the process. Your turn, Shana said as she looked at 13, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground and meditating. I need to purify you too. 13 opened her eyes and nodded in understanding. Just hug me from behind. I'm too lazy to stand up. In order to purify someone, Shana simply needed to touch them. Even touching their hands or head was enough. So if she wanted to, she could purify 13 by placing her hand on his head. But she decided to humor him this once and walked behind his back. Crouching down, he gave the teenage boy a hug from behind and channeled her purification magic. A minute later, Shana pulled back and slowly rose to her feet. Thank you, 13 replied before closing his eyes once more to meditate. We've almost arrived at the sanctuary, so keep your wits on you. I know, Shana replied before leaving the wagon to return to her own accommodation. They were only 5 hours away from their destination, but 13 asked everyone to have lunch for the time being. He wanted to make sure that none of them were hungry when they arrived at their destination so that if a fight were to break out, they would have the strength to defend themselves. Tiona's clone, who had infiltrated the sanctuary, managed to hear the conversations of the people inside of it. Some felt fear, excitement, and hope because people from the other side of the wall had reached their sanctuary. This meant that to a certain extent, traveling was possible despite the fact that there was a Magian king roaming the land. The Absolutes were already aware of the Magian king, demonic salamander, who usually spent his time underground. But they were afraid to face the hordes of jinns, so they limited their hunting area to only a few miles away from their sanctuary. The strongest among the Absolutes was only of the champion rank, so 13 wasn't too worried even if a fight were to really break out between them and the people living in the sanctuary. Suddenly, two little Pokopokos flew inside 13's wagon and landed in front of him. They were none other than Pika and Pyko, who had just been with their parents a few hours ago. The two little troublemakers were very chatty, but after Giga let them experience the nerfed Giga Destroyer, the two young Pokopokos finally knew true fear and became more obedient and respectful of 13, who had given them their names. "We saw a big salamander 10 miles away from here," Pyka said. "It is so big," Pyko commented. "Maybe as big as Rocky." 13 opened his eyes and glanced at the two Pokopokos, who immediately averted their gazes. "Are you telling the truth?" 13 asked. Pyka and Pyko nodded at the same time. "Okay, accompany me to its location," 13 said before standing up. "If what you say is true, we can't just pretend that it's not there." Although the Laplace demon had assured him that the Magian king wouldn't attack them, he still had some doubts about it. Because of this, he wanted to see it at least once and get a better grasp of the strongest monster within absolute heaven. Riding on Blackist's back, 13 followed behind the two Pokopokos, who were flying very swiftly. Despite Pyka and Pyko being rank 1 monsters, the teenage boy believed that they would be able to run away because the Pokopoko race was loved by the wind spirits. Despite looking harmless, Visago and Poka were now rank 5 monsters. 13 had left them with enough resources to break through their ranks, wanting them to grow stronger so that they would be able to protect themselves better. Originally, the Pokopoko race had a limit when it came to raising their strength. But who was 13? He had shared the secret of how Visago and Poka could become rank 9 monsters, which would make them the strongest members of their race. Although Pokopokos could be very annoying at times, the moment they gathered together, they were a force to reckon with. 13 understood their potential, so if he could make Visago and Poka the king and queen of Pokopokos, he would have the entire race under his control. Several minutes later, 13 looked at the demonic salamander, who was lying completely still in the distance. Just like what Pyka and Pyko had said, it was quite big. It was at least 5 meters tall, and the length of its body was as long as Rocky's. Although it was not as broken as the ancient 8-headed serpent, a Magian king was still a Magian king. As 13 observed the monster from afar, the demonic salamander moved its head to look in the teenage boy's direction. The two stayed at each other for nearly half a minute before 13 heard a voice directly inside his head. "Leave." It was just a single word, but the meaning behind it was enough. 13 no longer hesitated and backed away to return to his camp, leaving the Magian king behind. Once it was certain that the teenage boy had truly retreated, the Magian king's body shrank. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man with dark brown skin and brown eyes appeared in place of the giant demonic salamander. He then placed his hands behind his back and glanced in the direction of the sanctuary. "The time has finally come," the demonic salamander thought. "It's finally time to leave this place." Taking a step forward, the Magian king disappeared from his location and reappeared hundreds of meters away. He continued to walk forward, heading toward the sanctuary where the Temple of Courage was located. The reason why Laplace Demon was certain that the Magian king wouldn't attack the Wanderers was due to the agreement that the two of them had made hundreds of years ago. The demonic salamander wanted to return to Gomorrah, and in order to realize his goal, he would need to pass the trial of courage, which was also the final trial of the Wanderers, who were also a world away from their home. Sitting on the roof of her personal wooden wagon, Siri observed the wagon moving directly in front of her. It was a wagon leading the Wanderers toward the sanctuary where the Temple of Courage was located. The young lady had been feeling very restless recently. No matter how many times she challenged the teenage boy to battle, the one who would always be on the losing end was her. She even analyzed her opponent's battle style and thought of ways how to counter his moves. But even with her preparations, the result still ended in her defeat. Because of this, a theory formed inside Siri's head. Zion Leventis is not human. That was the only explanation that she could think as to why she couldn't win against him. Naturally, she and her people had done their research about the teenage boy's life, so she had a good grasp of his background and upbringing. Siri could understand that Zion was strong because he was born under the banner of the Leventis family. Although Gerald had been kicked out from the main family branch, she believed that this was just a smokescreen employed by the Leventis family. But the main factor that made her think that 13 wasn't human was the restrictions placed on his body. Rank ban, item ban, skill ban, avatar ban. Those 4 restrictions were enough to cripple any wanderer and stop their growth completely. But these restrictions didn't seem to affect the teenage boy much. In fact, she had more than just that reason to believe that Zion Leventis was hiding his true strength and merely using these so-called restrictions as a smokescreen to make others look down on him. He's definitely not human, Siri thought. No rookie human can defeat me in battle. There were also other things that the young lady didn't understand about Zion. First, he seemed to be too used to having beautiful ladies around him. Shanu, Erica, Sherry, Diana, and Mildred were all beautiful ladies. But despite the fact that they always interacted with Zion on a regular basis, she never saw any change in his expression when he looked at them. Even when Erica sat beside him and fed him some food during lunch or dinner, the young man always looked calm, as if being cared for by a beauty wasn't a big deal for him. Siri had seen how Roland looked at Shauna many times, and she could tell that he was looking at her as his mate. Joshua, the sage of the hero party, also gazed at the saintess with the same eyes, making Siri snicker internally. Even Derek, who didn't see Shano in a romantic way, would look at her secretly, appreciating her beauty from a distance. The swordsman was also like this to Erica, Diana, and Mildred, which Siri believed was a very normal thing to do. In fact, among the members of the hero party, Siri believed that Derek was the most normal of them all. He acted like his age, and he appreciated beautiful ladies. Of course, Derek would also look at her with appreciation. But perhaps due to Siri's age, Derek never considered her as a potential love interest. 13, although cordial, never showed any signs that he was attracted to any of the beautiful girls around him. Siri thought that maybe because he was still young, he was unable to appreciate the things that would make the other wanderers in their battalion wish to switch places with him. Another thing that Siri couldn't understand about Zion was the way he managed their battalion. For her, a true leader should be strong, firm, merciless, and have a brilliant mind. They should lead with an iron grip and rule their people through strength and fear. But Zion Leventis wasn't like that. Instead of ruling with an iron hand, he made sure that all wanderers were cared for. The way they fought monster hordes was the perfect example of how organized his army was. Those who didn't manage to get any items would be positioned to the rear, while those at the front would cripple the monsters so that those at the back could give them the killing blow. The distribution of cores was also systematic, allowing everyone to get their share. Siri couldn't understand why Zion was holding the hands of the wanderers, making sure that all of them would get their share. Even those who didn't specialize in fighting, like Kyle Walker's, the son of a carpenter, were treated the same as others. While she did agree that those who have production skills were very useful, she still couldn't understand what Zion's goal was. Is he perhaps brainwashing them so that everyone will think of him as a benevolent leader? Siri mused. Maybe he's just fattening them up so that they would become his slaves for life. Siri narrowed her eyes because she believed that this was indeed the case. She then subconsciously caressed the bracelet in her hand, which was something her mother had given her. This was an item that restricted her rank and power, greatly reducing her combat prowess. If her true power weren't sealed, she believed that the fake hero Roland and the fake human Zion would not stand a chance against her. I will let everyone see your true colors. Siri smirked. Your reputation that you've built meticulously will all come crashing down. And when the world turns its back on you, I will come to offer you a position as my subordinate. I'm sure Mother will be very pleased with this development. Siri had an agreement with her mother. She wanted to be free and travel the world, but her mother gave her a condition before she agreed to her demands. Defeat Zion Leventis by brain or by brawn. If you win, I will let you do anything you please. But if you are unable to surpass him by the time you turn 18, you will return home and be an obedient girl. Siri accepted this challenge because she thought that it was going to be easy. Since she was confident in her strength, this deal with her mother was something she wasn't too worried about. However, her earlier confidence and bravado had disappeared completely. 13 didn't hold back his punches when the two of them fought. He would not even hesitate to hit her face directly, which was very important to a girl. The only saving grace was that Shana was there to help heal her injuries, preventing her face from being disfigured. This hateful man, Siri clenched her fists in anger. Just you wait. I'll make you kneel in front of me. The young lady believed that she had been born as a ruler. Just like her mother, she wanted to be a queen that everyone looked up to. A sigh escaped Siri's lips as she momentarily set her thoughts about Zion at the corner of her head. She focused her gaze on the majestic city in front of her, which seemed to be made from white marble. They had finally arrived at the sanctuary. Siri had heard about the sanctuary and knew that hidden inside it were several treasures that would be useful for her. The teenage girl didn't intend to share them with anyone, for she didn't trust anyone in the first place. For her, all good things should belong to her, including loyal and capable subordinates who would pave the way for her to become the queen that she always aspired to be. Stella stood outside of the barrier protecting the sanctuary. She had arrived before 13 and his entourage, so now, she was patiently waiting for their arrival. The gates of the city were shut tight, and several people wearing armor stood at the ramparts, observing the young lady from a distance. No exchanges were made between the two parties because there was no need for one. Everyone simply waited for Zion Leventis to make his appearance. Fortunately, they didn't have to wait for a long time. An hour later, over 100 wooden wagons appeared in the distance, carrying the wanderers who had come to the sanctuary. 13, who was leading the group, saw Stella using the telescope in his hand, which made him frown. Although he already knew that their paths would cross again, he didn't think that she would be waiting for him to arrive at the sanctuary. Several minutes later, the procession of wagons stopped, and the wanderers gazed at the white city made up of white marbles up close. Of course, some eyes landed on the beautiful young lady with green eyes and long black hair, tied up in a ponytail with a butterfly hair clip. She looked like a fairy who had come out of a beautiful painting, and the mere sight of her made the teenage boys and some of the girls blush in awe of her hair. "Why are you pinching my waist?" 13 blinked innocently as she glanced at Erica, who was standing beside him. "Hey, sorry." Erica hastily removed her fingers from 13's waist. "I don't know what came over me." She wasn't lying. It was true that she didn't know what came over her. However, she could tell that she felt uncomfortable because 13 was staring at Stella as if he was going to eat her whole. "Do you know her, boss?" Sherry asked. "No," 13 replied. "But we already met." 13 ignored Stella and walked towards the barrier. He then picked up a random rock and threw it, intending to test what would happen the moment it made contact with it. Just as he expected, the rock was completely obliterated, turning into dust. It's similar to the effect of the barrier in the city of Ceneros, 13 thought. The wanderers, who were planning to touch the barrier, immediately retreated after seeing what happened to the rock that their leader had thrown earlier. The guards, who were standing on the ramparts, didn't say anything and simply looked at the wanderers who wished to enter their city. "I want to talk to your first guardian, Ares," 13 said. "We seek passage inside the sanctuary." The old man appeared and smiled from on top of the city walls. "The barrier will dispose for an hour at midnight," Ares said. "All of you can just wait until then." "I see." 13 nodded. "Very well. We shall enter your city at that time." The teenage boy then gave a signal for the wanderers to form a camp outside of the barrier. He still didn't trust Ares, so this setup was favorable for them. 13 had already discussed with the officers that only a small elite group would enter the sanctuary first in order to better understand their motives. Absolutes looked down on ordinary humans because they believed that they were a superior race. While the wanderers were all setting camp, Stella approached 13. Can we talk? Stella asked. Okay, 13 replied. What is it? Can I join your group? Stella inquired. My mission is to enter the Temple of Courage and conquer it. Okay. 13 nodded. You can join us later. Thank you. After getting 13's approval, Stella tossed what looked like a white pebble a few meters away from 13's wagon. The pebble then expanded and transformed into a white tent. I'll rest for a while, Stella said. Don't hesitate to call me if something unexpected happens. 13 nodded. Okay. The young lady shot 13 a meaningful gaze before entering her tent to rest. The teenage boy might not know Stella on a personal level, but he knew what kind of existence she was. She was a true hero, often referred to as the chosen ones by the systems who served them. He wasn't fond of them, but Stella wasn't being hostile to him, so he decided that there was no need for them to become enemies. Besides, having a true hero would make things easier because they were protected by fate. Until they reached maturity and performed the roles that were assigned to them, true heroes wouldn't die easily. They would also become stronger with each challenge, allowing them to face the demon lords, as well as those who possess power that no ordinary man or woman could defeat. While the Wanderers were busy setting up camp, the guardian of the sanctuary, Ares, observed them with great interest. He had already determined their ranks, which made him wonder how they were able to survive the journey to reach the sanctuary. The strongest humans among 13's group were the elites, and although they were strong for their age, they were nothing in the eyes of the absolutes. Are we really going to let them enter the city? Lord Ares, one of Ares' subordinates asked. Yes, Ares replied. They said that they are going to challenge the Temple of Courage. You already know that we cannot stop anyone who wishes to do so. That is the sole reason why our city exists in the first place. Not to mention, if they do succeed in conquering it, then the curse that plagues our people will finally be lifted. We can finally leave this hellish place. Located at the very back of the sanctuary was a tower with 13 floors. This was the Temple of Courage, and only those who were able to conquer all of the floors and reach the top would gain one of the treasures stored inside of it. Not only that, but a portal would also open, allowing them to teleport outside of the Absolute Heaven. The Absolutes had long wanted to leave the Absolute Heaven in search of a more habitable land with less danger and more opportunities. Their highest-ranked combatants had also stopped at the champion rank, unable to progress further. Currently, there were only 20 champions among the Absolute, while the rest were masters and grandmasters. In exchange for safety, their ranks could no longer progress. This was a very pitiful scenario for a superior race who once moved unhindered in the world, looking down on others whom they believed were beneath them. But, Elder, will they be able to survive the night raid? One of Ares' subordinates inquired. Should we tell them about it? We should, Ares replied. Tell one of our warriors to inform them of the monster raid that happens at night. If they are able to survive something like that, then they definitely have the qualifications to challenge the Temple of Courage. The old man then shifted his attention back to the teenagers outside of their barrier. He hoped that many of them would be able to survive the night. The more people who would challenge the temple, the higher their chances of success, which he and the other absolutes wished to happen. Hundreds of absolutes stood at the ramparts of the sanctuary, wanting to see how the Wanderers would handle the monster raid that happened almost every night. Some of them had come simply to watch an entertaining show and see who among the Wanderers would survive the monster onslaught. Little did they know that 13 already knew about the monster raid. Since Visago, Poker, and the clones of his parade of 100 demons had been observing the sanctuary for the past few days, everything that transpired was reported directly to him. Instead of being alarmed that a monster raid was going to happen at night time, the Wanderers were even feeling very excited. Under 13's training, in their point of view, a horde of monsters was equivalent to free items and free food. I wonder what kind of monsters we'll fight tonight, David said with a smile on his face. I hope they are tasty. Indeed, a skinny teenager nodded. I hope it's a new type of monster. That way, I can get new items from the kill. It's a shame that we didn't get an avatar after killing that rank 6 antlion, a chubby teenager commented. That was a very nasty critter. Don't remind me. David sighed. If Diana and Lady Shana weren't there, we might have suffered several casualties. The Wanderers were ambushed by the rank 6 antlion when 13 went away to scout in another direction. Fortunately, Diana had been around to take command, allowing them to subdue the monster who even tried to flee after it was seriously injured by their swarm tactics. 13, who was sitting on top of his wagon, smiled faintly, proud that his subordinates were now battle-hardened warriors. Truth be told, he knew that antlion was coming to ambush them. However, he chose to scout at that time to see how much all of them had improved. The Temple of Courage was not a simple trial. All the Wanderers needed to fight because they would not be able to return to Pangea if they didn't pass the test. Because of this, he decided to let them face the antlion without his leadership. It's a good thing they succeeded, 13 mused. Tonight will probably be the last night we will fight together. 13 planned to challenge the Temple of Courage alone, not forming a party with anyone. The boss room located on the temple's 13th floor was a bit special. The final boss would match the challenger's strength, giving them a 50-50 chance of victory. If someone challenged the boss room alone, the difficulty would match that person. If a group were to challenge the boss room, the difficulty would also rise drastically, depending on how strong each individual was. It was quite ironic. The final floor gave everyone a chance of victory, allowing them to complete their mission regardless of how strong or weak they were. Laplace Demon told me to not divulge this information to the others. 13 frowned. Knowing Roland, he will definitely party with his original party. But there's a possibility that a raid team will be formed, composed of different parties. If 2 or more parties arrive on the 13th floor, they will definitely face a very strong opponent. The only reason why 13 agreed to keep this information a secret from the others was due to the fact that once a Wanderer stepped on the 13th floor, they could no longer die. This meant that even if they were defeated by the boss on the 13th floor, they would simply be ejected from the temple, allowing them to keep their lives. It's almost time, 13 thought as he slowly stood up from his wagon. The sun had already set, and darkness was slowly descending upon the land. Then, they appeared. Over the horizon, countless shining orbs of light ran in their direction. These orbs of light were the eyes of the monsters, reflecting light. Battle stations. 13 shouted. Immediately, the Wanderers formed ranks, preparing to engage the enemies that had come to attack the city. The members of the hero party stood at the front of the formation. 2 banners, one gold and one white, fluttered in the breeze, illuminating the surroundings. The effect of Diana's and Shani's banners washed over the Wanderers, giving them the strength and courage to fight this battle. Siri and Stella also stood at the front lines, while 13 remained at the back. The teenage boy wanted to see just how strong Stella was, so this was a perfect opportunity to see her in battle. Brace! Diana shouted as she embedded her golden flag on the ground before summoning her shield and sword. The Wanderers who specialized in tanking monsters all lined up beside the Crusader with their shields at the ready. Ready! Erica ordered as she flew toward the sky and summoned dozens of flaming spears. Aim! Mildred shouted as the archers, who were located at the center of the formation, prepared to unleash their first volley. 13 narrowed his eyes and waited for the monsters to get within their strike range before giving the order. Open fire! 13 ordered. Whistling sounds spread in the surroundings as the arrows of the Wanderers took flight. Erica had also unleashed her flaming spears toward the approaching monsters, ready to roast them into barbecue. Shani also embedded her banner on the ground, infusing it with her power. A transparent dome of light enclosed everyone in its protection. The good thing about the Saintess barrier was that it allowed attacks from within to hit those outside of it. Because of this, Erica, Mildred, and all those who specialized in ranged attacks could focus on attacking. Interesting. A middle-aged man with dark brown skin and brown eyes watched the battle from afar with his arms clasped behind his back. It was none other than the demonic salamander, who had taken human form. Just like the Wanderers, it also planned to enter the Temple of Courage. But since the sanctuary was protected by a powerful barrier, he decided to wait until midnight before entering the city. If the Magian King wished for it, he could make all the monsters charging toward the city flee in fear by releasing his presence. But he didn't do that. The ancient eight-headed serpent, who could threaten the demonic salamander's life, had suddenly disappeared from absolute heaven. Despite doing his best to investigate, he didn't manage to get any clues as to how the horrifying ancient eight-headed serpent disappeared without a trace. He never thought for a second that it was actually one of the weak wanderers who had defeated the monster that forced him to flee for his life. Ants, ho! 13 frowned when they finally discovered what kind of monsters they were facing. At first, he thought that these ants would be the same ants Diana and the others had faced during their mission. But upon closer inspection, he realized that they were a different breed of ants. These ants were as black as obsidian, and they numbered in the thousands. Official. Of course, the majority of these monsters were rank 1 and rank 2 monsters. Even so, fighting swarms wasn't that easy, especially when stuck between a rock and a hard place. In front of them were thousands of ants. Behind them was the barrier of the sanctuary. If they were pushed back by their enemies, even if the ants didn't kill them, the barrier would obliterate them. Erica! 13 shouted. On it! Erica replied as she unleashed a barrage of flaming spears in the sky. She was like a flame turret, blasting the ants non-stop. But Erica alone was not enough to keep them at bay. Aside from the ants on the ground, 13 could hear the buzzing of countless wings headed in their direction. Just great. Now we have flying ants too. Derek grumbled as he hacked and slashed the ants that had collided with their tankers, who were holding the monsters at bay. Siri, who was fighting alone while wielding her war axe, had a feral smile on her face as she sliced the monsters in half. Due to her unique fighting style, it was very troublesome to have her fight alongside others. With this put into consideration, she was set to have her own designated area to protect, killing a few ants with a single swing of her axe. While 13 was debating if he should summon Giga and the others to help deal with the flying ants, he saw a young lady fly upward, leaving a trail of green light behind her. Stella, with her hair fluttering in the breeze, held her bow in her hands as she unleashed countless magical arrows while in the air. On her back was a pair of green butterfly wings, catching the attention of the people on the ground. From their point of view, Stella looked like the Queen of Fairies as she fought alongside them. The arrows that left her bow left a trail of green light behind, making them look like green comets. They pierced her enemies in a straight line, similar to a laser beam. Oh, not bad, 13 thought. Since most jinns were colorblind, it was hard for them to see the color green, especially light green. Stella's attacks that left trails of light in the sky were actually invisible in the eyes of the jinns. Simply put, they died not knowing how they died. It was nearly impossible to evade what you couldn't see, and Stella's attack was just like that. Invisible to the eyes of the monsters who crashed to the ground after they were pierced by her arrows. Unfortunately, no matter how strong Erica and Stella were, the monsters were simply too numerous to fight. Sure *T. Erica cursed out loud when the flying ants were only hundreds of meters away from her. She had stopped attacking the ants on the ground because they weren't an immediate threat to her. Stella, who was also about to be swarmed by the ants, suddenly heard a screech in the sky. Ethan had come to her rescue and charged at the flying ants like a hot knife cutting through butter. The giant wren's rank would change from time to time, depending on the situation. At the moment, it was a rank 6 sovereign, but most of its strong abilities were sealed. Even so, a rank 6 monster was still a very powerful monster, giving Stella some breathing room as she continued to unleash her arrows at the flying swarm of ants. Erica wasn't as lucky, so she gritted her teeth as she evaded and hurled spells at her enemies who were only dozens of meters away from her. While she was starting to panic, she heard the voice of Tiona's clone inside her mind. Don't worry, just fight normally. The black snake, who was coiled around Erica's neck, relayed 13's message through Tiona. How can I fight normally like this? Erica wanted to curse, but she had no leeway to do that. She was now completely surrounded by the swarm of ants on all sides, and even though she had raised her rank and became an elite, one mistake could end her life. Just as one of the flying ants was about to bite the young lady from her blind spot, its body was sliced in half, and both parts fell from the sky. Don't panic, the Birdman, Zed, stated. Zion had asked me to make sure you don't die. Just fight normally. I will handle the rest. You should have told me earlier. Damn it. Erica cursed as she once again resumed unleashing attacks at the monsters on the ground, helping her allies who were being pushed back by the monster army. Zed was a rank 8 sovereign, an existence that made the Dvalin Federation not dare to push their expansion to its territory. Zed hovered behind Erica and annihilated any of the ants who dared to come near them. He was really not interested in helping the Wanderers this time around, but since he had nothing to do, and he also wanted Zion to owe him a favor, he decided to lend his hand this time around. With Erica's safety guaranteed, 13 decided to assist the Wanderers using another method. Rocky rose up from the ground and summoned his comrades to battle. The members of the Parade of the 100 Demons also wreaked havoc at the center of the enemy's formation, giving the Wanderers some time to regain their bearings. 13's monster army focused on attacking the ants that were rank 4 and above. Rocky personally dealt with a rank 6 commando ant, who was leading the ants to battle. Jiga and the others fought near the center of the enemy formation, assisting the Parade of 100 Demons in their battle. Originally, 13 didn't plan to let his monster army fight this battle, but it was impossible for the Wanderers to overcome such numbers. Even the monster hordes they've previously faced numbered only a little over 1,000. This time, they were fighting thousands. In order to prevent casualties, he decided to not hold back and ordered his allies to join the battle. He had learned his lesson with Cranky. Since he didn't want to suffer regrets, he would give it his all whenever the occasion called for it. An hour later, the monster tide was finally defeated, leaving the Wanderers breathless due to how intense the battle was. That is the kind of swarm that the Siny continent will be facing in the future, 13 said once everyone had regained their composure. Also, the monsters who would lead them in the final days of the invasion will be rank 7 and above. Make sure to remember to fight within your limits. If you are fighting with only a small group of people, and you think that you are not able to hold on to your lives, make sure to run away so that you can fight another day. After saying those words, 13 ordered everyone to double-check the monsters lying on the ground and make sure that they were truly dead. Some monsters like to play dead before launching a suicide attack at the closest enemy, taking them with them to the afterlife. Stella softly landed on the ground, feeling very exhausted. A small wren then landed on her shoulder and started chirping as if telling her that she had done a good job earlier. I still have a long way to go, Stella thought while glancing at the teenage boy standing on top of his wagon, with his arms crossed over his chest. Although 13 didn't participate in fighting against the ants, he didn't stop issuing commands during the battle, encouraging the Wanderers to do their best. Stella had witnessed how 13 fought against the Magian King. Even though the power he used to defeat it was only borrowed from the Monkey King, it didn't change the fact that he still fought against the Magian King using everything he had. Similar to Siri, Stella wanted to prove something to herself. She wanted to stand on her own 2 feet and gain recognition beyond just the background she was born with. For that, she would spare no effort, even if it meant paving the way with her own flesh and blood. With the threat of the monster tide finally behind them, the Wanderers busied themselves with collecting the monster cores. As for the ants, their bodies were kept. For the Wanderers, they were a good source of protein, and they tasted good when barbecued. Unfortunately, the bodies of the black ants were different from what they expected. They were as hard as iron and steel, so eating them was not something that the Wanderers were very keen to do. Jiga and the other members of 13's monster army stored the higher rank ant corpses inside the mobile fortress. Since their body could be used by their master's father, Gerald, as crafting materials, taking them back to Pangea was the best option. Still, the teenage boy was certain that his father would ignore these monster corpses because he would go crazy in forging items from the parts of the Magian King. Just the scales alone were enough to create shields and armor that was strong enough to withstand a direct hit from a rank 8 sovereign. As to whether Gerald would be able to craft mythical equipment, and above using the Magian King's body parts, 13 could only wish that Lady Luck would smile upon him. Of course, it was not only Gerald who would get the opportunity to work on a high-quality material. The members of the Siny faction and David's team had also been able to salvage some scales from the Magian King. David said that he planned to auction the scale that belonged to him, so that he could help his family's finances. Since he already received adamantine-grade weapons and armor, he believed that he already had what he needed to survive in his next missions. Adamantine-grade gear was the second highest rank equipment, second only to mythical equipment. The public was aware that there were only 5 mythical equipment in the world, and they belonged to the 4 monarchs and the Grand Marshal of the central government. Of course, the Grand Marshal of the central government, Lawrence Seaton, knew that Arthur Leventis was also in possession of mythical equipment, which the latter didn't plan to disclose to the public. After all, the balance of power could change the moment a new set of mythical equipment appeared in the world. 13 didn't know if the blacksmiths of the other factions would succeed or not. However, deep inside, he wanted them to succeed in creating mythical equipment. The more of these equipment appears, the higher their chances of protecting Pangea from the Jinn invasion that would take place in a few years. The demonic salamander, who had taken a human form, sat on a small hill with his eyes closed, deep in thought. He didn't expect that the monster tide would be dealt with in this manner. Frankly, he thought that there would be many casualties because the scale of the monster tide was bigger compared to how it was in the past. If not for the fact that strong monsters appeared to help the Wanderers, there was a possibility that they would lose half of their numbers. Ares, who had also watched the battle from start to end, felt a bit alarmed because many strong monsters had appeared to help the Wanderers. The monster that caught his attention was none other than the Boatman, Zed, who was a rank 8 sovereign. A monster that was as fast and powerful as the Boatman could easily kill everyone in the sanctuary. He had seen this monster talking to the teenage boy leading the Wanderers. At that point, he realized that he shouldn't antagonize them too much. "Commander, please inform everyone to be on their best behavior when we welcome our guests," Ares ordered. "Yes, Your Excellency," the commander replied. Even if Ares didn't tell him anything, the commander also planned to tell his subordinates that they shouldn't mess with the teenagers who would soon enter their city. Everyone who watched the battle unfold understood that, although the teenagers were weak, the monsters assisting them weren't. Only fools would poke a hornet's nest, the Wanderers protected by a rank 8 sovereign. Several hours later, 13 and the Wanderers looked at the gates of the sanctuary that was slowly opening in front of them. The barrier was slowly turning transparent, indicating that, soon, it would fade away and that they could finally enter the city. "Captains, tell everyone to get ready," 13 ordered. "We will be entering the city soon." 10 minutes later, the barrier finally dispersed, and Ares personally walked out of the gates to welcome 13 and the Wanderers under his command. "Please follow me," Ares said. "We have already prepared your accommodations." 13 nodded. "Thank you, Lord Ares." The teenage boy's wagon led the way and was the first to enter the city. Just like its majestic walls, everything inside the sanctuary was made of white marble, including the road that they were traveling on. There were a few children peeking at them from the windows of the houses along the way. The curious ones would look and friendly ones would wave in their direction. But whenever they did, these children would hide as if they were scared of them. "Guests are very rare here in the sanctuary," Ares commented as he walked alongside 13's wagon. "Actually, we haven't had guests for the past hundreds of years. You guys are the first." "Can I ask something, Lord Ares?" 13 asked. "Why not?" "How old are you, Your Excellency?" Ares chuckled. "Good question. I stopped counting after I went past 600. The Absolutes were a long-lived race, and they could averagely live up to 900 years. This was the reason why they believed they were superior to humans. Unfortunately, they were humbled after the Jinns invaded the Absolute Heaven. Their once prosperous empire now lay in ruins, and only a few thousand managed to survive inside the sanctuary. The older Absolutes like Ares only wished that before they finally breathed their last, their people would once again start rebuilding their former glory, even if they had to start from scratch. "The temple you are looking for is over there." Ares pointed at the tallest tower in the city. "If you need a guide, just tell us. We have experienced warriors who managed to reach up to the 12th floor." 13 gazed at the tall tower that overlooked the entirety of the sanctuary with a calm expression on his face. In order to complete their mission, they needed to reach the 13th floor and fight the opponent that the world of Solterra had prepared just for them. The sanctuary was a very large city, extending up to 3 miles. Since there were only around 3,000 absolutes residing in the area, there was more than enough space to spare for 13 and his comrades. The people living inside the city only looked at them from a distance, very curious of the first visitors that graced their city after hundreds of years. The accommodation Ares mentioned was the buildings near the Temple of Courage, granting the wanderers convenience when challenging it. After all, they must repeatedly go into the temple until they conquer it, given that they would be able to return alive after entering its doors. As the leader of the wanderers, 13 was assigned to the closest mansion to the temple, which he readily accepted. Naturally, Erica and Sherry decided to stay in his accommodation, having established the habit of sleeping by his side. Since the mansion had several rooms, 13 also invited the hero party to stay with him as well. As for Siri and Stella, they both stayed in the opposite mansion. Although they still had more room, everyone was afraid of Siri, so no one dared to join the two girls inside the mansion, simply settling for the other nearby houses to rest for the time being. Since it was already late at night, they wanted to challenge it in the morning after a nice long rest. This bed is not as soft as the one inside Rocky's mobile fortress, Erica said as she patted the bed with her hands. Since the mobile fortress was one of 13's secrets, they had no choice but to sleep on the wagon during the night so that no one would get suspicious of them if they suddenly disappeared. Just be happy that you get to sleep on a bed, 13 said. Also, why are you in my room? There are many rooms here in the villa. You no longer need to sleep beside me. Erica, who had completely forgotten about this matter, frowned. On one hand, she had already gotten used to using Zion as her hug pillow during the night. On the other, she had missed having a room of her own to sleep. Sherry was also having the same dilemma as the sorceress. Now that they could get their own rooms, there was no need for them to stay by his side at night. Hey, are you sure that you can sleep alone at night? Erica asked. Sometimes, you cry in your sleep and hug me tightly as if you don't plan to let me go. Are you sure you can survive alone? That's right. Sherry nodded. It is worrying because you look so sad in your sleep. Who knows what might happen when no one is watching you? Just like Erica had stated, there were nights when 13 would mumble and cry in his sleep. Sometimes, he would hug Erica. Sometimes, he would hug Sherry. The two girls didn't know what kind of dreams the teenage boy was having during those times, but seeing him sad triggered their maternal instincts despite being teenagers themselves. 13 blinked once then twice before shaking his head. You don't have to worry about me, 13 replied. I'm going to be fine. But I'm still worried, Erica insisted. We've already slept together multiple times on our way here. Keeping it up until the end wouldn't be a big deal, right? It won't, 13 replied. But for tonight, I want to be alone. Tomorrow, we can sleep together again if you want. Really? Erica inquired. 13 nodded. Just for tonight, I want to sleep alone. Erica glanced at Sherry, and the latter nodded her head. Since the teenage boy was determined to sleep alone, they decided to respect his opinion and went to the rooms beside 13's room. When he was finally alone, a sigh escaped 13's lips as he walked toward the window. Everything will end soon, 13 muttered while looking at the tower that stood tall, overlooking the sanctuary like a lighthouse. There was a reason why he wanted Erica and Sherry to sleep in other rooms aside from his own. At least for tonight. Because if they were there was a chance that his plan would have some complications. It was already past midnight, so the wanderers had all gone to bed, taking a proper rest. Even Erica and Sherry immediately fell asleep the moment their heads laid on their pillows. 13, on the other hand, sat cross-legged on top of his bed as he meditated to calm his mind and body. Several minutes later, Tiona poked her head from the ground and crawled up the bed until she arrived at 13's shoulder. She then whispered something in his ear, making the young man open his eyes. Thank you, Tiona, 13 said before standing up from the bed. He then walked toward the window of his room, and after glancing outside for nearly half a minute, 13 jumped down and moved stealthily toward the doors of the Temple of Courage. The main reason he didn't want Erica and Sherry to stay inside his room was because he planned to enter the temple as soon as possible. Of course, he made sure to leave a letter behind so that they wouldn't be too worried about his sudden disappearance. What the Wanderers didn't know was that the Temple of Courage was actually a dungeon with 13 floors. Each floor had a wandering boss monster that they may or may not encounter during their exploration. The main reason why 13 went up ahead was to make sure that the Wanderers wouldn't have to deal with the stronger monsters on the upper floors. He intended to deal with all of them beforehand and, in turn, reduce the casualties they could have had due to the difference in strength. There were two ways on how to get to the next floor. The first one was to defeat the wandering boss monster and proceed to the next floor as a reward. The other was to find the portal that led to the next floor without encountering the monster. Every time the boss monster was killed, the portal would appear on the place where they had died, and these monsters wouldn't respawn soon, unlike the other monsters inside the dungeon. The reason for this was that each of these bosses were real monsters that were forcefully taken from the outside world by the power of the Temple of Courage. The moment they die, the temple would randomly select a djinn monster of appropriate level from the outside world and teleport it inside its interior. This process would take 2 weeks. 13's plan was to eliminate all of them in the shortest time possible, granting the Wanderers safe passage for half a month. When 13 entered the first floor, he read the wooden board that was planted beside its entrance. First floor challenge, Horn Rabbit Maze. Just like the name implied, the first floor was a maze, and it was being patrolled by horned rabbits. These rabbits were one of the weakest rank 1 monsters in the world, but they were also among the most annoying to fight, especially if you hadn't received formal combat training before being spirited away for the first time. 13 casually slashed the horned rabbit when it lunged in his direction, cleanly cutting off its head. "I have no time for this," 13 muttered before summoning his parade of 100 demons. After summoning his minions, the teenage boy gave them their orders. "Find the exit or find the boss," 13 ordered. "If you encounter the boss, feel free to defeat it and call me once it's done. Now, go." The monsters under 13's command scattered in the different paths of the maze, exploring its every nook and cranny. A few minutes later, the rat man, Kasari, made a report that he had already killed the horned rabbit boss, and the portal had appeared in his location. "Good job," 13 replied as he ran to the location of the portal. Although he wasn't certain if he could conquer all 13 floors within a day, he would climb as high as he could before the Wanderers, who were still sleeping peacefully in their beds, wake up and start challenging the temple, as well as the horrors that were waiting for them inside of it. The term speedrun was a very common term among gamers. Clearing the game at the fastest time possible was considered a sport, and many professionals liked to beat each other's records in order to show the world that they were faster than their peers. What 13 was doing was similar to speedrunning. However, his goal wasn't to beat anyone's records. His goal was to simply reach his goal as fast as possible. While his minions did kill the boss monster on the first floor, they ignored the boss monsters on the second floor because they found the portal first. The lower floors wouldn't pose as much threat to the Wanderers, so 13 was more than happy to leave the weaker bosses for them to handle. Ares had said that the Absolutes had managed to step into the 12th floor. However, none of them was able to beat its guardian or find the portal that led to the 13th floor. The real reason why no one could find the portal was due to the fact that the boss monster was guarding its location. In short, in order to proceed to the last floor, they would have to defeat the boss of the 12th floor, which Ares deemed impossible for them to defeat. Why? The strongest absolutes inside the sanctuary had the rank of champion, but even they had been unable to eliminate the monsters and were even easily turned into meat paste. "I've been here inside the temple for 5 hours, 13 mused as he drank from his water flask. They will probably wake up soon. The teenage boy had managed to climb up to the 8th floor, but he knew that it would no longer be as easy as the previous floors. For one thing, all the floors starting from the 5th floor were very spacious, extending for miles on end. They were also made up of different environments, highlighting different challenges. The 5th floor was a jungle. The 6th floor was a wetland. The 7th floor was a desert. And the 8th floor, it was a mountain that was at least 6,000 to 7,000 meters tall, according to his estimate. Although it wasn't as high as Mount Everest, it was still a very challenging mountain to climb, riddled with mountain goats that were all rank 3 and rank 4 monsters. 13 knew that the portal or the boss monster would be located at its peak, and each step he took him one step closer to his destination. Fortunately, the majority of the rookies have adamantine-grade weapon and armor, 13 thought. Although it would not be easy, they should still be able to defeat a rank 4 monster if they fought it as a team. 13 believed that the one would not let the rookies fight a battle that they wouldn't be able to win. Because of this, 13 decided to ask Tiona's clone to tell Erica or Sherry, if they looked for him, that the strongest mob monsters inside the Temple of Courage were rank 4 monsters. This way, the Wanderers would form teams in order to advance to the higher floors. Since there was no limit on how many members a team may have, there was no problem if they went there in a group of 20 people. They could even form multiple teams and challenge each floor as if they were facing a raid boss, which would also increase the chances of success. Since the Absolutes would send someone to guide the Wanderers up to the 12th floor, 13 deemed that he no longer needed to do anything else aside from warning them that they should form groups to challenge the Temple of Courage. As 13 neared the peak, he saw over a dozen mountain ibexes glaring in his direction. Standing behind them was a 5-meter-tall, golden horned ibex, which was the boss monster of the 8th floor. Rank 5 Sovereign, 13 mused. Strong enough to pose a challenge for the 8th floor. Not bad. I'll give it a serious injury, and let the hero party give it the finishing blow. Among the Wanderers under his command, only the hero party, Stella, and Siri were capable enough to defeat a rank 5 Sovereign. Since the monster dying in his hands wouldn't give him any items, he felt that it would be a waste for him to give the bosses the finishing blow. Kill the small fries. 13 ordered his parade of 100 demons. Tiona and I will handle the boss monster. Tiona hissed happily. Ever since they had entered the temple, she hadn't had the chance to fight alongside her master. Now that they were going to deal with the golden horned ibex together, the black snake would make sure that they would defeat it with flying colors. Erica opened her eyes and looked at her surroundings in a daze. She subconsciously patted the left side of her bed, which was usually where Zion lay whenever they slept together. Only when the last dregs of sleep left her body did she remember that she had slept in the room right next to Zion's. The sorceress of the hero party raised her arms and did a few light stretches before leaving her bed. I guess I'll wake him up first, Erica thought as she left her room to wake the teenage boy, whom she believed was still asleep. Since she wanted to surprise him, she didn't knock on the door and instead tried to open the doorknob first. To her surprise, the door wasn't locked, making her shake her head helplessly. Zion is being too lax, Erica sighed. Just because this place doesn't seem dangerous doesn't mean that he should forget to lock his door. The sorceress planned to give the teenage boy a piece of her mind as she entered the room. Erica smirked evilly as she walked toward the bed. There, she saw a lump covered by a blanket, making the smile on her face widen. When she was only a reach away from the bed, Erica grabbed the blanket with both hands before raising it high in the air. Rise and shine, Zion, Erica shouted. But, to her surprise, the only thing she saw under the blanket was a pillow, making her eyes widen in shock. Erica glanced around the room and noticed Tiona's clone waving at her with its tail from on top of the table. Right beside the black snake was a handwritten letter, which 13 had left behind to prevent everyone from worrying about him. After reading the letter, the sorceress cursed under her breath before leaving the room in a huff. She planned to wake up Sherry, Shanu, and the other members of the hero party, and tattle that Zion Leventis had sneaked into the temple in the middle of the night, leaving everyone behind. As soon as Erica discovered that Zion wasn't inside his room, she hurried to Sherry's and Shani's room and woke them up, telling them what happened. So this is why he said that he wanted to be alone last night, Sherry said after reading the teenage boy's letter. He planned to enter the Temple of Courage on his own. Damn right. Erica fumed. If I catch him later, I'll make sure to give him some peace of mind. Shanu, who had just finished reading 13's letter, had a frown on her beautiful face. The Wanderers all agreed to challenge the Temple of Courage at around 10 in the morning, Shana said. Even if we try to follow Zion now, we still need the others to ensure that we all pass safely. Also, we need the guides from the Absolutes, or we might take a longer time exploring the different floors of the temple. As much as I want to look for Zion now, it is best that we wait until everyone is ready to depart. Erica clicked her tongue because she understood that she couldn't solo the Temple of Courage on her own. 13 was capable of it because he had a monster army that could help him deal with his enemies. Sherry understood this very well. But what she didn't understand was why Zion needed to do it alone. If he only waited until morning, they would form the strongest party that was guaranteed to conquer all the floors of the temple, allowing them to arrive safely at the 13th floor. Just why did he go alone? Erica pondered. He never does anything without a proper reason. I'm sure that he didn't decide to fight solo just because he could. Zion would not hesitate to take the lead if this meant that everyone would be able to pass the test safely. Sherry, who was also thinking along the same lines as Erica, was also wondering why the teenage boy did what he did. In the end, she couldn't think of any other reason, so she decided to just return to her room to take a bath and make her final preparations before entering the Temple of Courage. Erica, who was at a loss for what to do, remembered that Tiona's clone was still in Zion's room. Because of this, she hurried back in fear that the black snake would no longer be there when she returned. Fortunately, Tiona's clone remained where it was, making Erica breathe a sigh of relief. You can communicate with your master, right? Erica asked. The black snake nodded to confirm the sorceress's statement. Then tell him this. If I catch him, he's dead. Erica declared. Oh wait, don't tell him that. If you really tell him that, he would definitely speed things up because he wouldn't want to be captured by me. Too late. Tiona's clone has already told me everything. 13's telepathic reply reached the young lady's mind. Damn you, little brat. Erica grabbed the black snake and shouted in anger. Why did you leave without us? Because there's something that I need to do, the black snake replied. Also, tell everyone that fighting solo is not advisable. 2 squads should move together to clear every floor up to the 7th floor. Starting from the 8th floor and above, 3 to 4 squads are advisable. The monsters here are rank 3 to rank 4 monsters, and some groups are led by rank 5 alpha monsters. The boss monster on the 7th and 8th floor are both rank 5 sovereigns, so the hero party must step up to kill those bosses. Erica frowned as she listened to 13's words, but she didn't interrupt until the teenage boy had finished talking. When he was done, it was now finally her turn to speak. So, are you currently on the 9th floor? Erica inquired. Yes, 13 replied. I'm sure that the guides from the Absolutes will help you climb the temple faster, so you will reach this point after a few hours. Still, don't let your guard down, and don't be too overconfident. There is a reason why the Absolutes were unable to clear this temple, so you guys better not underestimate your opponents. Wash your neck, Erica said. I'll strangle you when I catch you. Ah, what did you say? 13 asked. The connection is getting choppy. I can't. After those words were spoken, no more reply came from 13, which made Erica's face turn red in anger. Clearly, the teenage boy was merely pretending that the connection was choppy to end the conversation. Still, Erica didn't doubt 13's words even for a second, so after much deliberation, she headed back to her room in order to prepare for their expedition. There were 18 squads under 13's command. Each squad was composed of 50 individuals, including their squad captain. 18 squads, 18 squad captains. This was the current number of people under 13's battalion. When the squad captains heard that their supreme commander had entered the Temple of Courage on his own, all of them were shocked. None of them expected something like this to happen. Everyone, please listen, Roland said in a serious tone. I will now tell you the raiding plan for the Temple of Courage. Everyone quieted down to let the young man speak. Roland was a hero of the hero party, so he commanded a certain degree of respect among wanderers. My party and I will lead the 1st and 2nd squads to enter the temple, Roland said. After that, the 3rd and 4th squad will team up, then the 5th and the 6th, and so on and so forth. There will be 2 squad captains working together to clear each floor. Every team will have a guide to show them the fastest way to the next floor. The difficulty of the challenges that we will face will also grow in each floor, but the spike of difficulty will be truly felt on the 7th and 8th floor. As for the 9th floor, it will be best if 4 squads work together to clear it. David, who was paying close attention to Roland's statement, raised his hand to voice his opinion. If we will form 4 squads on the 9th floor in the end, I think we should just enter the temple with 4 squads each, David stated. Not only is there safety in numbers, but we can also clear it faster. Lastly, it will save time because we no longer have to wait for the other squads to arrive before challenging the 9th floor. With 4 squads from the start, we will no longer have any problems in the long term. Lastly, since there are only 18 squads, the hero party can follow their original plan of bringing 2 squads with them. Roland pondered a bit before agreeing to David's proposal. Good. Roland nodded. We will follow your proposal. Aside from my team and the 2 squads that will follow me, the rest of you form 4 squads each. David smiled because he knew that Roland wasn't a narrow-minded person. His suggestion was the best way for everyone to pass their last trial while ensuring that the majority of the Wanderers would be able to return to Pangea. It was not a matter of pride or whatnot. After everything they had gone through in this mission, the bonds they shared with their battalion was something they would cherish for life. Return to your squads and inform them about the things we discussed, Roland ordered. Tell them to make their last-minute preparations. We will enter the temple in exactly an hour from now. Yes, sir. After the squad captains left the meeting area, Roland shifted his gaze to the tower, which would lead them back home. Although not many understood 13's decision to challenge the temple on his own, Roland had a vague understanding of the reason why the younger boy did it. Is treating us like greenhouse flowers, Roland sighed internally. Sometimes, I don't know if meeting Zion is a blessing or a curse. After getting beaten by the teenage boy, Roland realized that he had many weaknesses. He always believed that no one could beat him on the same rank. But after his battle with 13, not only did he lose to someone whose rank was weaker than him, but he was even trained by the same person for a month. This humbled him very much, which made him no longer underestimate anyone, especially those weaker than him. One day, I will surpass you, Gerald vowed. Just you wait, Zion. 13, who was listening to the meeting earlier, smirked because David's proposal was indeed good. The only reason why he said that 2 squads should work together on the lower floors was to allow everyone to have a chance to hone their fighting skills further. But having 200 Wanderers per team wasn't a bad thing either. This way, they would be able to react to stronger enemies and beat them by using their battle formations. They had already mastered this to a certain extent after constant battles against hordes of monsters. Still, the 9th floor will still be very difficult even with 4 squads per team, 13 muttered to himself. Currently, T1, O1, and O2 were teaming up against a rank 6 sovereign, which was also the boss monster of the 9th floor. The rest were busy dealing with the rank 5 alpha monsters and the rank 4 monsters under their command. Rocky didn't join the battle and simply watched his comrades fight, with his master sitting on top of his head. 13 was now feeling exhausted due to the non-stop battles, so he decided to sit this one out. Don't kill the boss, okay? 13 reminded the troll warlord and the 2 ogres. We'll leave it for the hero part to deal with. Just injure the boss enough, so they would not be too hard-pressed in their battle against it. The rank 6 sovereign was a steel golem, which was not only very strong but very sturdy as well. This monster was 6 meters tall and packed a powerful punch, which made even the ogres feel a world of pain. Its subordinates were composed of iron golems, alpha monsters, bronze golems, and earth golems. Normal weapons were not effective against such monsters, but adamantine-grade weapons stood a chance. Lastly, those with elemental abilities like Erica were very strong against such monsters. The only problem was that the golems numbered in the hundreds. 13 was only able to rest easy because his monster army was strong. Ratatoska, who was living inside Rocky's mobile fortress, was having a hard time fighting against such sturdy opponents. The White Rat Man might be fast, but his attacks didn't hit as hard as the ogres, making him unable to deal damage to the iron and bronze golems. Because of this, he focused his attention on the weaker earth golems, which was devastated by his fighting style. Ratatoska didn't have enough time to fight as of late, 13 thought. He's a hero, but he still hasn't undergone proper character growth. Ratatoska was supposed to be the one who would save the Ratmen race from the ogres by reclaiming their origin shard. But this process would have taken years to finish, and 13 didn't have the time to wait until he managed to gain the strength he needed to overcome his adversaries. So he decided to just let Ratatoska train the normal way, and he even taught the latter the divine martial art called Splinter Arts. This martial art was created by a mutated rat who raised some turtles during his free time. This was the perfect martial art for the White Rat Man, due to its origin and practicality. If Ratatoska succeeds in raising his master of the divine martial technique to a higher level, the iron and steel golems wouldn't be his match. Heck, even crystal and adamantine golems would flee from his kicks and punches. Unfortunately, this would not be happening anytime soon because the Ratman had only mastered this martial art at the elementary level. But what amused 13 the most was the two troublemakers, Pika and Pyko. The two young Pokopokos would land on the shoulders of the golem and shout, telling them that they suck, which triggered the golems into attacking them. But the two birds were as fast as they were annoying. In other words, they are incredibly speedy. They are very good at taunting monsters, 13 mused. I wonder where they get that trait from. Visago and Poka were by no means mild-mannered, but the two young Pokopokos were like loose cannons, saying and shouting whatever they wanted. Fortunately, the golems didn't have any long-range attacks, so the two were always out of their reach. Suddenly, a loud crash sounded in 13's ears, forcing him to shift his attention to the steel golem, who had been tossed by the combined power of the two ogres, creating a crater on the ground where it fell. But since it was a golem, it didn't feel any pain, frustrating the troll warlord and the two ogres who were fighting it. Perhaps out of anger and desperation, the two ogres decided to attack the steel golem while it was down by using their bodies to body slam it, pinning it on the ground. The troll warlord, who saw the perfect opportunity to strike, started to hack the steel golem's head with his blades, resulting in a spark with each strike. Should I order them to kill it? 13 pondered. Maybe I should have taken Siri with me. The teenage boy found killing the boss monsters wasteful because the Wanderers would benefit greatly from defeating them. After pondering for a minute, 13 decided to stick to his plan and only cause enough damage to the steel golem so that Roland's party could take it out. 5 minutes later, 13 clapped his hands together. Okay, guys, that's enough, 13 stated. Let's pack up and let the others deal with the golems. Rocky, who was waiting for 13's order, sent everyone back to the mobile fortress before they headed to the portal that would take them to the 10th floor. 13's progress was so fast that when the guides heard that the teenage boy had already reached the 9th floor, they desperately wanted to know what kind of juice he was drinking because they wanted to have a taste of it as well. In order to reach the 10th floor, they would usually spend 5 to 8 days inside the Temple of Courage, which they believed was already very fast. But after hearing that a 13-year-old human boy had done what they couldn't, all of them felt that the younger generation had truly surpassed them all.